Tonight we're exploring the complete history of Ultra Beasts and every dimension they call home. This is a topic with a lot to uncover, but I'll keep my narration calm so you can still drift off to sleep. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment night 1. Now back to the video. Imagine, if you will, the peaceful shores of the Alola region. It is a place defined by its balance, its vibrant natural beauty, and the rhythmic pulse of the ocean waves hitting the sand. For generations, the people of these islands lived in harmony with the creatures they knew as Pokémon. They understood the elements, the seasons, and the spirits of the land. But beneath this tropical paradise, a tear was forming in the very fabric of reality. On September 6, 2016, the world was introduced to something that defied every law of nature we had come to accept. These were not Pokémon as we understood them. They were something else entirely. They were the Ultra Beasts. When we look back at the history of these entities, we aren't just looking at a new category of creatures to be catalogued in a Pokédex. We are looking at an existential shift in the understanding of the multiverse. For the longest time, the boundaries between our world and the vast, swirling chaos of ultraspace were thought to be impenetrable. But as we would soon learn, those boundaries are far more fragile than anyone dared to imagine. The story of the Ultra Beasts is a story of scientific ambition, tragic loss, and the terrifying reality of what happens when two worlds that were never meant to meet begin to bleed into one another. It all began with a man named Mohn. Years before the events that would shake the Alola region to its core, Mohn was a brilliant researcher and the president of the Aether Foundation. He was a man driven by curiosity, a man who looked at the stars and the empty spaces between them and saw not a void, but a door. He was the first to truly document the existence of ultra wormholes, those shimmering, unstable portals that act as bridges between our reality and the dimensions beyond. Mohn's research was groundbreaking, but it came with a heavy price. During one of his experiments, he encountered the first known Ultra Beast, an entity known as Nihilego, or UB01 Symbiont. In that moment of first contact, the veil was lifted, and Mohn was lost. He vanished into the wormhole, leaving behind a family, a legacy, and a vacuum of leadership that would eventually be filled by a darkness no one saw coming. The disappearance of Mohn acted as the catalyst for everything that followed. His wife, Lusamine, took the reins of the Aether Foundation, but she was no longer the woman she once was. Her grief over the loss of her husband twisted into a singular, all-consuming obsession. She didn't just want to find Mohn, she became infatuated with the very things that had taken him. To Lusamine, the Ultra Beasts were not invasive monsters or dangerous anomalies. They were the pinnacle of beauty. They were pure, untainted by the mundane world, and she would stop at nothing to possess them. This obsession would lead to the creation of Aether Paradise, a gleaming white fortress in the middle of the ocean that served as both a sanctuary for injured Pokémon and a secret laboratory for some of the most ethically questionable experiments in human history. While the Aether Foundation operated in the light, another group was tracking these entities from the shadows. The International Police, led by the enigmatic Looker, had been aware of the Ultra Beast threat long before the public. They didn't see beauty, they saw a breach of global security. They saw creatures that could tear through steel and bend the laws of physics with a single thought. They classified them with code names, stripping away any sense of familiarity. UB02 absorption, UB03 lighting. These were designations for weapons of nature that the world was not prepared to handle. The International Police knew the cost of these encounters firsthand. They had lost officers to the beasts, people who were labeled as fallers because they had passed through the wormholes and returned changed, their bodies radiating an energy that acted as a beacon for the very monsters they were trying to escape. As we dive deeper into this history, we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean to be an invasive species on a cosmic scale? The Ultra Beasts are not inherently evil. They are simply organisms from another reality, thrust into an environment where they do not belong. To them, our world is as alien and hostile as ultraspace is to us. When a buzzwole flexes its massive, glass-like muscles, it isn't necessarily looking for a fight. It is reacting to a world that feels fragile and wrong. When a Xurkitree drains the power grid of an entire city, it is simply looking for the nourishment it needs to survive. But their mere presence is a catastrophe. They are living contradictions, biological entities that shouldn't exist according to our science. The stakes of this history are incredibly high. We are talking about the potential collapse of reality. If the Ultra Wormholes were to stay open, if the Aether Foundation's experiments had succeeded in merging the two worlds, the Alola we know would have ceased to exist. It would have been consumed by the chaotic energy of ultra space, turned into a playground for entities that don't breathe our air or follow our gravity. This is why the creation of the Beast Killer project was so significant. Deep within the sublabs of Aether Paradise, scientists attempted to play God by stitching together the traits of various Pokémon to create a biological weapon capable of standing against the beasts. The result was Type Null, a creature born in agony, designed to be a savior but treated as a failure. In this exploration, we will look at every known Ultra Beast and the specific dimensions they call home. From the towering, rocket-like Celesteela to the paper-thin, lethal precision of Kartana, each one tells a story of an environment we can barely comprehend. We will examine the technology of the Beast Ball, a specialized capsule designed by Faba that uses a unique electromagnetic field to capture these extra-dimensional beings. We will trace the timeline from Mohn's first discovery to the final resolution of the Ultra Beast crisis in the Alola region. This journey will take us through the shimmering corridors of Ultra Megalopolis, a city in a world where the light was stolen by the legendary Necrozma, forcing its inhabitants to live in a perpetual, artificial twilight. We will learn about Poipole and Naganadel, the only Ultra Beasts known to have an evolutionary relationship, and how they coexist with the people of their dimension. We will look at the strange, fortress-like Stakataka and the explosive, clownish nature of Bliss. The history of the Ultra Beasts is a tapestry of human emotion and cosmic horror. It is about the lengths a person will go to for love, and the terrible things that can happen when that love turns into an obsession with the unknown. It is about the bravery of those who stood on the front lines against an enemy they couldn't understand, and the resilience of a world that refused to be torn apart. As we move forward into the darkness of ultra space, remember that every shimmer in the air and every crack in the sky holds a story. Some of those stories are beautiful, some are tragic, and some are still waiting to be told. We will begin our journey at the very start, with the man who saw the first light from another world and the shadow it cast over his family. We will walk through the sterile halls of the Aether Foundation and the rugged landscapes of the Alola Islands. We will face the beasts, not as trainers, but as chroniclers of a history that spans across dimensions. The veil is thinning, the wormhole is opening, and the truth is waiting on the other side. Let us step through and discover the complete history of the Ultra Beasts and the infinite dimensions that define them. The air in Alola is usually thick with the scent of tropical flowers and the salt of the sea, but when an Ultra Beast is near, the atmosphere changes. It becomes cold, static, and heavy. There is a sense of wrongness that settles into the bones of anyone nearby. This was the feeling that greeted the first responders and the researchers who dared to look into the abyss. They found themselves staring at creatures that looked like they were made of crystal, wire, and light. Nihilego, the first of its kind to be documented, appeared like a translucent jellyfish, drifting through the air with an ethereal grace. But its beauty was a mask for a terrifying parasitic nature. It didn't just attack, it merged. It sought a host to protect and to control, a symbiotic relationship that was more about possession than partnership. This parasitic connection would eventually define the fate of Lusamine. In her quest to reach the beasts, she allowed herself to be taken, to be changed. It is one of the most haunting images in the history of the Pokémon world. A human being, once a mother and a leader, becoming a vessel for an alien entity. This event showed the world that the Ultra Beasts were not just physical threats, they were psychological and spiritual ones as well. They challenged the very definition of what it means to be a living creature in our universe. But the story isn't just one of horror. There is a strange, alien majesty to these beings. Consider Celesteela, a creature that resembles a massive bamboo shoot combined with a space shuttle. It stands over 30 feet tall and weighs nearly 2 pounds. It is a biological rocket, capable of flying across the stars and burying itself in the earth to draw nutrients from the soil. In its own dimension, it is likely a cornerstone of the ecosystem, a majestic giant that moves with the slow, deliberate pace of a mountain. Here, it is a titan that could accidentally level a forest just by taking off. Or consider Kartana, a being so sharp it can cut through steel as if it were air, yet it is made of something resembling paper. It is a contradiction of fragility and lethality, a testament to the diverse and bizarre evolutionary paths taken in the pockets of ultraspace. The International Police's role in this history cannot be understated. They were the ones who had to deal with the fallout when the Aether Foundation's secrets were finally exposed. They worked in tandem with the kahunas of the Alola Islands, the traditional protectors of the land, to contain the outbreaks. This collaboration between modern law enforcement and ancient tradition was a unique moment in history. It showed that when faced with a threat from beyond our world, the internal divisions of our own world begin to fade. This again in the Crown Tundra, where years later, Ultra Beasts would reappear in the Max Lair, suggesting that the ripples caused by the Alolan crisis are still being felt across the globe. The lore of the Ultra Beasts is often described as a concluded chapter, a period of time where the gates were opened and then firmly shut. But the impact they left behind is permanent. They changed the way we look at legendary Pokémon like Solgaleo and Lunala, revealing them to be the emissaries of these distant worlds, the only beings capable of truly navigating the ultra wormholes without losing their minds or their forms. They gave us a glimpse into a multiverse that is vast, terrifying, and infinitely complex. As we settle in to examine every detail of these dimensions, from the ultra plant where lightning strikes the ground in a never-ending cycle, to the ultra crater where the earth itself seems to breathe, we do so with a sense of wonder. We are looking at the ultimate frontier. The Ultra Beasts are the pioneers of that frontier, and their history is a map of the unknown. We will look at the specific biology of each beast, the unique energy they radiate, known as the Beast Boost, and how that energy interacts with our world. We will discuss the moral implications of the Beast Killer project and the redemption of those involved. The story of the Ultra Beasts is a reminder that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. Our world is just one island in a vast ocean of realities. Sometimes the tide brings things to our shore that we aren't ready for. Sometimes those things are beautiful, and sometimes they are dangerous, but they are always a part of the greater history of life in all its forms. So, let us begin our deep dive into the shimmering, chaotic, and fascinating world of the Ultra Beasts. We will start at the beginning, with the first tier in the sky, and we won't stop until every dimension has been explained. The silence of the deep ocean, the stillness of the jungle at midnight, and the vast, empty stretches of the desert. These are the places where the barriers are thinnest. These are the places where the first whispers of the Ultra Beasts were heard. It wasn't a roar or a scream, but a hum, a low-frequency vibration that signaled the arrival of something that didn't belong. For those who were there, for the scientists at Aether and the agents of the International Police, that sound became the soundtrack to a new era. An era where the rules were rewritten and the impossible became the everyday. We will talk about the individual personalities of these beasts, as much as they can be said to have them. The aggressive pride of a Buzzwole, the cold, predatory elegance of a Pheromosa, and the mindless, consuming hunger of a Guzzlord. Guzzlord, perhaps the most terrifying of them all, a creature that is essentially a living black hole, capable of consuming entire buildings and leaving nothing behind, not even waste. Its existence in a ruined, future version of the Alola region serves as a grim warning of what could happen if the balance is ever truly lost. Through this narration, we will explore the tragedy of the Fallers, those individuals who were touched by ultraspace and could never truly come home. We will look at the courage of the protagonist, who stepped into the wormhole to save a family that had been torn apart by ambition. And we will see how the Alola region, through its trials and its traditions, found a way to bridge the gap between our world and the world of the beasts. This is the complete history. This is the story of every dimension, every beast, and every soul caught in the crossfire of a cosmic collision. It is a long journey, one that spans across time and space, but it is one worth taking. So get comfortable, Let the world around you fade away, and join me as we step through the Ultra Wormhole. The history of the Ultra Beasts is about to unfold, and every secret of the multiverse is ready to be revealed. The journey begins now, in the heart of the Alola region, where a man named Mohn first looked into the light and saw the future. A future that was as bright as a star and as dark as the void. A future that we are finally ready to understand. From the first sighting of UB-01 to the final battles in the Ultra Megalopolis, we will cover it all. Every name, every code, every type, and every truth. This is the definitive guide to the creatures that came from beyond the stars. This is the history of the Ultra Beasts. In September of 2016, the Pokémon Company released a trailer that felt different from anything that had come before. It wasn't just the usual reveal of new creatures, new gym leaders, or a new region to explore. This was something else. The trailer opened on a sunlit beach in Alola, then cut to a strange, translucent jellyfish-like entity floating in a sterile laboratory. The narrator called it UB-1 Symbiont. And then, a single question hung in the air. What exactly are these things? Are they even Pokémon? For more than 2 decades, the world had a comfortable understanding of what a Pokémon was. They were creatures that lived in forests, oceans, and caves. They could be caught in Pokeballs, trained in battles, and befriended by children and adults alike. But the Ultra Beasts challenged that definition at its very core. They weren't native to the world we knew. They came from somewhere else, a place called Ultra Space, and they didn't behave like any creature the Pokémon world had catalogued. They were invasive, alien, and in many cases, dangerously powerful. The atmosphere of those first trailers was deliberately unsettling. There were no cheerful jingles or bright battle sequences. Instead, we saw footage of a young woman standing on a rooftop, staring at a shimmering portal in the sky. We heard hushed whispers from researchers about an organization called the Aether Foundation. The music was a slow, pulsing synth, almost like a heartbeat, and the Ultra Beasts themselves moved with an eerie, unnatural grace. Buzzwole's rigid, mosquito-like silhouette, Pheromosa's silent, predatory strides, Xurkitree's tangled electric limbs. They didn't belong, and the game made sure you felt that. This was the beginning of a journey into the cracks between dimensions. The Pokémon world had always hinted at other realities. The distortion world in Sinnoh, the Sinjoh ruins, the link between Ho-Oh and the legendary beasts. But Alola was where the barriers became fragile, where wormholes could tear open over a schoolyard or inside a research facility, and where the very idea of a Pokémon was stretched, pulled, and reshaped into something that felt both terrifying and majestic. The mystery of the 2016 reveal wasn't just about what these creatures looked like. It was about what they meant. If Ultra Beasts were Pokémon, then the definition of Pokémon had to expand to include beings from an entirely different plane of existence. If they weren't Pokémon, then what were they? The games would give us answers, but not before forcing us to sit with the uncertainty. And that uncertainty, that sense of stepping into the unknown, is where our story truly begins. So let's step back to that moment before the first wormhole opened. Let's go to the quiet edges of Alola, where the horizon seems just a little too close, and the sky sometimes shimmers with colors that have no name. Because the Ultra Beasts didn't arrive without warning. They left a trail of clues, of missing researchers, of unexplained incidents. And in understanding that trail, we begin to understand the very fabric of what lies beyond. This is the threshold, and what waits on the other side will challenge not just what you know about Pokémon, but what you know about reality itself. In the next chapter, we'll define exactly what an extra-dimensional being means in the context of this world, how scientists, trainers, and legends all grappled with the same question. What are we really dealing with when we cross into the great beyond? The previous chapter left us standing on the shore of Alola, staring at a horizon that had suddenly become far stranger than we ever imagined. When the first hints of Ultra Beasts emerged in 2016, they did not simply introduce new creatures to the roster, they cracked open the very definition of what a Pokémon could be. The Pokédex, that trusted encyclopedia of known life, had always assumed a certain stability. Every species had a type, a habitat, a place in the order of things. But here were entities that seemed to come from somewhere else. not from a distant region, not from a forgotten island, but from a whole other dimension. And that distinction is everything. To understand the Ultra Beasts, we have to first accept that they are not native to the world we know. They are extra-dimensional, and that word carries weight beyond simple geography. A Pokémon like Pikachu, even a legendary like Mewtwo, is born of the same physical laws, the same evolutionary history, the same fundamental chemistry as the rest of the planet. An Ultra Beast is not. It arrives through a tear in reality, an Ultra Wormhole, and its very presence is an intrusion. The scientific community, particularly the Aether Foundation, was quick to classify them as invasive species. But that term is more than just a label. It is a framework for understanding why these creatures behave the way they do. An invasive species, in ecological terms, is one that enters an ecosystem where it has no natural predators, no established checks, no evolutionary cohistory. It disrupts the balance because the local web of life has not had time to adapt. Now imagine that on a dimensional scale, the Ultra Beasts are not just moving from one continent to another, they are crossing into a reality where the rules of physics may differ. Their bodies, their energy, their very biochemistry are built for a different universe. When they land in our world, they become apex threats by default. And this is where their power level comes into focus, a power that often rivals and sometimes exceeds that of legendary Pokémon. Consider what a legendary Pokémon represents. Typically, these are beings that have shaped the natural order of the planet, the creators of land and sea, the guardians of time and space. They are tied to the fundamental forces of our reality, but an Ultra Beast is not bound by those same forces. It draws its strength from a completely different set of parameters. When a legendary like Dialga wields time, it does so according to the rules of our universe. An Ultra Beast like Nihilego, on the other hand, operates with a biological structure that is alien to everything we know. Its body is composed of a neurotoxic substance that can melt consciousness. It doesn't need to manipulate our laws. It simply exists as something our world has no defense against. This is not a matter of one being inherently stronger than another. It is about mismatch. A legendary Pokémon is a master of its domain. An Ultra Beast is a wild card that does not even recognize the domain. When the Aether Foundation began studying them, researchers noted that standard were almost useless. The capture rate was abysmally low, not because the beasts were resisting, but because the mechanism that bonds a Pokémon to a ball relies on compatibility with the creature's aura, its energy signature, its essential nature. Ultra Beasts are so fundamentally different that the technology could not lock onto them. That is why Beast Balls had to be invented, a specialized capsule designed to interface with extra-dimensional energy. And this brings us to the biological markers that distinguish an Ultra Beast from a terrestrial creature. There is no single list of traits, but patterns emerge. First, nearly all Ultra Beasts have a stat total that is uniformly high, often 570 or above, comparable to many legendary Pokémon. Second, many of them possess abilities that are unique or extremely rare, but the most telling marker is a subtle quality that the games refer to as their base attack and defense stats, being distributed in extreme ways. A creature like Buzzwole has phenomenal attack but terrible special defense. Pheromosa is blindingly fast but fragile as glass. These are not balanced designs. They are specialized to a degree that suggests they evolved in an environment where such extremes were necessary for survival. In our world, such specialization would be a liability. In Ultra Space, it is the norm. Then there is the ability that every single Ultra Beast shares: Beast Boost. This is not just a mechanical tool for battles, it is a narrative statement about their nature. Beast Boost means that whenever an Ultra Beast knocks out an opponent, its highest stat rises even further. The more it conquers, the stronger it becomes. This is a feedback loop of escalation. It tells us that these are creatures designed for dominance. They are not interested in coexistence. They are programmed to overcome anything that stands in their way. In the lore, this ability explains why they are such a threat. A single Ultra Beast, left unchecked, could theoretically snowball into an unstoppable force simply by defeating enough local life. That is the mark of an invasive species refined to a terrifying edge. But the classification as invasive species also carries a deeper thematic implication. Invasive species are not evil, they are not malicious, they are simply misplaced. When a European starling was introduced to North America, it did not intend to disrupt ecosystems, it was just doing what starlings do. The same is true of ultra beasts. They are not villains. They are organisms following their instincts in a world that was never meant to host them. Look at Nihilego. It is a symbiont. Its nature is to attach itself to a host and manipulate that host's psyche. When it bonded with Lusamine, it did not do so out of cruelty. It simply saw a compatible life form and acted according to its biology. The tragedy is that Lusamine's obsession and grief made her vulnerable. The beast did not create that vulnerability. It exploited what was already there. This perspective is crucial for understanding why the Aether Foundation took such drastic measures. When they created Type Null, the beast killer, they were not making a weapon against a villain. They were building a tool to stop a force of nature. Type Null was designed to be able to take down an ultra beast, and its evolution Silvally can change its type to match any opponent. That is a testament to how adaptable a solution had to be. You cannot counter an alien creature with a single strategy. You need something that can mirror and counter any possible threat. And even then, Silvally is not invincible. The beasts are that formidable. As we sit here in the quiet of the night, thinking about these creatures drifting through the void between dimensions, there is a profound sense of isolation. The ultra beasts are not at home here. They are lost. They are wandering through a landscape that feels wrong under their feet. A sky that looks nothing like one they were born under. Their power is a symptom of displacement. They are like a deep-sea fish dragged to the surface, brutally strong in its own element, but bewildered and dangerous in ours. And this is where the story gets even stranger, because the ultra wormholes are not just portals. They are living phenomena. They have their own rules, their own logic, their own dangers. To understand how the beasts get here, we have to understand the mechanics of the wormhole itself. The energy that tears reality apart, the creatures that generate those tears, and the fate of the man who first dared to step through. That is the journey we will take next. For now, let the image settle. A shimmering rift in the air, the shape of something stepping through. Not evil, not good, just different. And that difference is powerful enough to rewrite the rules of an entire world. So we've already established that ultra beasts are extradimensional. They don't belong here, and their power alone would be enough to destabilize ecosystems if they ever arrived en masse. But that question of arrival is where the real mystery lives. How exactly does a creature from another universe step into ours? The answer lies in something far more precarious than a simple doorway, something that bends the very fabric of reality until it tears. These tears are called ultra wormholes, and they are not stable structures. They aren't permanent gates built to last. They're violent, temporary ruptures in space-time, cracks that open under very specific conditions, and then collapse almost as quickly as they form. To understand how they work, you have to look at the environments where they occur. Ultra wormholes don't just appear anywhere. They are triggered by extreme natural phenomena or by immense pressure. The kind of pressure that builds up when a living creature is pushed to its absolute limit. Think about the places in Alola where these rifts have been observed. The skies above 10-Carat Hill, the deep caverns beneath Vast Pony Canyon, the open ocean near the altar of the sun. These are locations already saturated with natural energy, where the boundary between dimensions is already thin. But it takes more than just a thin spot. It takes a catalyst, a lightning strike during a storm so powerful it seems to split the sky in two, a volcanic eruption that sends tremors through the bedrock, a sudden concentrated burst of wind from a hurricane. These phenomena act like a hammer striking a pane of glass that was already under stress. And when the glass breaks, the wormhole opens. But natural phenomena aren't the only triggers. There is a deeper, more troubling cause. High-stress environments, places where immense psychic or emotional energy collects, and also destabilize the dimensional barrier. This is where the story takes a turn into the biological, because not all wormholes are punched open by earthquakes or lightning. Some are created by a living creature, and that creature is Cosmog. Cosmog is often described as the protoster of the Pokémon world, a tiny gaseous being that looks almost like a nebula given form. It's fragile, almost defenseless, and spends most of its time floating in a dreamlike state. But Cosmog holds a secret power that defies its delicate appearance. Under extreme stress, when it senses danger, or when its emotional state reaches a breaking point, Cosmog can generate a wormhole. It does so by drawing on a form of energy that isn't entirely of this world. Its body acts as a living key, a biological mechanism that unlocks a passage to ultra space. This is not a gentle process. When Cosmog opens a wormhole, it's the result of intense pressure, often caused by fear or desperation. The creature itself may not even understand what it's doing. It's an instinctive response, a survival mechanism that allows it to escape by tearing a hole in the fabric of reality and slipping into another dimension. But that escape comes at a cost. The energy required to create such a rift is immense, and it leaves Cosmog weakened, sometimes to the point of near collapse. It's a terrible irony that the creature most capable of bridging worlds is also the one most vulnerable to the effort. And what happens to anything that passes through those rifts? Whether it's an ultra beast entering our world or a human being accidentally falling into ultra space, the journey itself is anything but gentle. Traversing a wormhole inflicts a physical toll on organic matter that researchers are still trying to fully understand. Those who have witnessed the process describe a feeling of compression, as if the body is being squeezed through an opening far too small, then stretched again on the other side. The disorientation is overwhelming. Colours invert, sounds become distorted, and time seems to behave erratically. For some, the experience leaves lasting effects. Headaches, nausea, and a lingering sense of detachment from reality that can persist for days or even weeks. The Ultra Beasts themselves seem adapted to this trauma. Their bodies are built to withstand the dimensional shear. Their cells are denser, more resilient, able to endure the violent reconfiguration that a wormhole requires. But organic matter from our world is not so durable. The few humans who have been lost to ultra space, or who have returned from brief encounters, speak of a sensation unlike anything else. It is not just a physical journey. It feels like a fundamental rewriting of the self. The body remembers the shape it had before, but for a moment inside the wormhole, that shape is no longer guaranteed. That vulnerability is exactly what makes the Aether Foundation's early research so critical. They realized early on that to understand Ultra Beasts, they had to first understand the wormholes. And to understand the wormholes, they had to track down the phenomena that opened them. This led them to the most significant discovery of all: the link between Cosmog and the rifts. And that link points back to one man, the first person to ever lay eyes on an Ultra Beast and survive. A man whose name became buried in the Foundation's classified files, his story known only to a handful of researchers before it was finally pieced together years later. His name was Mohn, and his journey into the unknown began not with a grand experiment, but with a single fragile creature drifting out of a tear in the sky. We have seen how ultra wormholes tear open the fabric of reality, how they appear at points of stress or sheer chance, connecting our world to a place that defies our understanding of physics. But wormholes are not phenomena that form on their own. They require a catalyst, a wound in space-time. And the first human being to study that wound, to throw himself headlong into the mystery of ultraspace, was a man named Professor Mohn. Mohn was not a soldier. He was not a government agent or a thrill seeker. He was a scientist, a husband, a father, and he was the president of the Aether Foundation, an organization founded with the noble aim of caring for Pokémon. But Mohn's curiosity reached beyond the natural world of Alola. He began to ask questions that few had dared to ask. What lies beyond the boundary of our dimension? Are there other worlds filled with life forms that have never touched our sun? And if such worlds exist, can we reach them? His early research into ultraspace was a quiet, methodical affair. He studied the anomalies that appeared in the skies above Alola, the strange lights that flickered and vanished, the gravitational distortions that made compasses spin. He gathered data from fishermen who reported seeing impossible shapes ripple in the ocean, from hikers who watched the stars bend in the twilight. Mohn pieced together a picture of a realm that was not empty, not dead, but teeming with something alive. And then he found the key. It came in the form of a tiny, fragile creature, a Pokémon called Cosmog. Cosmog was not like the others. It could open portals with its own body when under stress, tearing open rifts to ultraspace as a reflex. Mohn studied it with wonder. Began to suspect that Cosmog might itself be an ultra beast, a being from that other dimension, born into our world by accident. This discovery electrified him. He believed that if he could understand Cosmog, he could understand the wormholes. He could cross over, but the crossing was not meant to be a gentle arrival. Mohn's research brought him into contact with something else, something that had been waiting on the other side. The day the first contact happened, the records are sparse. What we know comes from fragments, from the testimony of those who were there, and from the data logs that survived. Mohn was in a secure research wing of the Aether Foundation. He had detected an ultra wormhole forming inside the facility, probably triggered by Cosmog's stress. Instead of retreating, he moved closer. He wanted to see what came through. What came through was a being of translucent, ethereal glass, a form that shimmered like a jellyfish made of starlight and poison. It was not aggressive in the way a predator is aggressive. It was curious. It drifted toward him, and Mohn, in his scientific fervor, reached out. He touched it, and in that moment, the symbiont did what a symbiont does. It bonded. It began to absorb, to alter, to consume. Nihilego, VIII Symbiont, the first ultra beast ever encountered by human hands, and it claimed him. The tragedy of Mohn's disappearance is not that he vanished into thin air. It is that he vanished into something far more consuming. The notes of his research, his meticulous observations on ultraspace, on Cosmog, on the wormhole mechanics, all of it was lost. The data was corrupted, scattered, or simply erased in the chaos that followed. Some say he was pulled through the wormhole himself. Others say his mind was broken by the alien contact, that his body remained, but his consciousness was hollowed out. What we know for certain is this: Mohn never returned. The Aether Foundation was left without its founder, without its guiding light, and in that vacuum his wife Lusamine took the reins. The loss did not make her withdraw, it made her obsessed. She began to read every fragment of his notes, every half-finished theory. She decided that if the Ultra Beasts had taken her husband, then she would find a way to reach him, to bring him back, or to destroy the things that had stolen him. One man's curiosity sparked something that could not be contained. It rippled outward from that single contact. Through the halls of the Aether Foundation, through the international police, through the very fabric of Alolan society, the research that Mohn began became the foundation for weapons, for containment protocols, for an entire branch of dimensional science. The world did not know it yet, but the door had been opened wide, and on the other side of that door, someone was beginning to descend. When Mohn vanished into the white void of ultraspace, he took a piece of the Aether Foundation with him. The organization was built on a partnership, on a shared dream of conservation that stretched far beyond the shores of Alola. Without Mohn, that dream became hollow. Lusamine was left standing on the top floor of Aether Paradise, surrounded by an artificial world that suddenly felt like a cage. The man who'd shown her the stars had been consumed by them, and the silence he left behind was absolute. The psychological impact of Mohn's disappearance on the Aether Foundation cannot be understood through simple grief. It was a fracture that ran straight through the heart of the organization. The Foundation had always presented itself as a family, a sanctuary for Pokémon in need. But without its guiding force, the matriarch began to change, in ways that were invisible to the public. Lusamine refused to accept that Mohn was gone. She refused to mourn. To mourn would be to admit defeat, to admit that the dimensions had won. Instead, she decided to find him, and that decision slowly, silently, began to rewrite the very purpose of the Aether Foundation. This is where we witness Lusamine's transition from a grieving widow to an obsessed researcher. It was not a sudden transformation, it was a gradual corrosion. She began to spend less time in the bright conservatories where Pokémon roamed freely, and more time in the depths of the facility, surrounded by screens and data streams. The beauty of the natural world lost its hold on her. She became fixated on the static of ultra space, on the faint signals that might lead her back to Mohn, the creature that had taken him. Nihilego, the first recorded ultra beast, became the singular focus of her existence. It was no longer an invasive species to be studied. It was a thread, a link, a doorway, and she would stop at nothing to pull it open. Deep beneath the pristine surface of Aether Paradise, hidden labs began to grow, floors that did not appear on any official map, corridors filled with the hum of machinery and the cold glow of monitors. This was the shift toward unethical experimentation. The Beast Killer Project was born from maternal desperation, but it was raised on a diet of scientific ruthlessness. Type Null was not a Pokémon born of nature. It was a weapon, stitched together from the strongest genetic material the Foundation could acquire, a chimera designed to stand against the very forces that had taken Mohn. It was a testament to what happens when the boundaries of science are eroded by pain. Faba, the Foundation's branch chief, developed the Beast Balls, a cage designed specifically for the creatures Lusamine needed to capture. The line between protection and imprisonment blurred until it ceased to exist. The Foundation's original mission was forgotten, buried beneath layers of classified research. At the core of every decision Lusamine made lay a secret goal, a goal that she guarded more closely than any experimental data. The secret goal of reuniting with the lost entities of ultra space was the engine that powered her descent. She did not want to simply close the wormholes. She wanted to step through them. She wanted to stand in the dimension where Mohn had been taken. Slowly, her perception of the Ultra Beasts began to warp. She stopped seeing them as threats. She began to see them as inhabitants of a perfect, beautiful, chaotic world. A world she desperately wanted to join. It was a fatal form of reverence. She began to lose herself in the very concept of ultra space, staring into the abyss until the abyss stared back. The woman who had once offered sanctuary to wounded Pokémon began to long for the alien beauty of the things that lived beyond the sky. But Lusamine was not the only force tracking the trail of these extra-dimensional beings. While she built her weapons and stared into the void, a different story was being written far from the artificial island of Aether Paradise. A story of first contact, of catastrophic failure, and of a codename system etched in tragedy. This story, the one chronicled in the International Police files, is a tale of a different kind of hunt. A hunt born from a loss just as profound as Lusamine's, but fought on a much smaller, much more personal scale. It is a story of a single agent, a desperate operation, and the very first beast ball ever thrown. Lusamine's grief did not simply break her. It reshaped the Aether Foundation into an engine of obsession, where the boundary between protection and possession blurred into something unrecognizable. While she ordered the construction of weapons meant to fight gods from another universe, a far quieter operation was already underway. The International Police had been tracking these threats long before the Aether Foundation knew what a wormhole looked like. Their files are the original chronicle of humanity's first contact with the Extradimensional, and for years those files remained sealed. The secret history of the International Police tracking extra-normal threats begins not in a laboratory, but in a series of impossible reports filed by rural law enforcement across Alola. Fishermen who saw lights falling into the ocean that did not splash. Hikers who heard frequencies that made their skin vibrate. Children who described monsters that looked like nothing in any textbook. These reports arrived at the International Police headquarters, slowly at first, then in clusters. Someone had to make sense of them. That someone was Looker. Looker's early missions involving sightings of unidentified flying entities took him to places that did not appear on any tourist map. He stood on volcanic slopes at midnight, watching the sky split open without a sound. He interviewed families who had watched their livestock act strangely for days, before a creature simply appeared in their field, stood motionless for an hour, and then dissolved into light. He did not know what he was hunting yet. He only knew that something was visiting this world. And it did not come in peace. These were not Pokémon. They did not respond to calls, or to food, or to conflict. They simply existed in a space that did not belong to them. Eventually, the evidence became undeniable. Looker filed his report, and the classification of Ultra Beasts as high-priority security risks was formalized in a single meeting that lasted less than 30 minutes. No press release, no public announcement, just a new category in the International Police database, stamped with a clearance level that most agents would never reach. From that moment forward, any encounter with an Ultra Beast was treated as a potential extinction-level event. The language in the protocols changed. Officers were no longer instructed to observe and report. They were authorized to use lethal force if containment could not be achieved by other means. This was not hunting. This was damage control. And this is why the public was kept in the dark during the early years of the phenomenon. The international police understood what the average citizen could not be expected to process. The existence of Ultra Beasts challenged the fundamental assumption that the Pokémon world was the center of the universe. It suggested that other dimensions were not just theoretical, but close enough to touch, that a doorway could open in a child's bedroom with no warning, that the laws of physics were more like suggestions. If this knowledge had spread before the Aether Foundation had developed the Beast Balls, before Looker's team had established containment protocols, the social collapse would have been catastrophic. People would have armed themselves against shadows. They would have seen wormholes in every storm cloud. The international police made a choice. They kept the truth locked away, not to hide it from the world, but to give the world time to survive it. Looker carried this weight alone for longer than he should have. He was partnered with Nanu, the exceptionally uninterested kahuna of Alola Island. But Nanu's cynicism was a mask for his own trauma. Nanu had been there. He had seen an Ultra Beast kill a fellow officer in the field. He knew exactly how dangerous this work was, and he knew that the public would never understand. So the two of them built a network of informants, safe houses, and silent protocols across the islands, all designed to intercept sightings before they reached the press. They worked like ghosts, ensuring that the chaos of a dimensional breach was cleaned up before most people had time to wake up and notice. But the work took its toll. Looker became paranoid in ways that served him professionally, but destroyed him personally. He spoke to himself in hotel rooms. He filled notebooks with obsessive theories about where the Ultra Beasts came from and what they wanted. He began to realize that the international police was not the only organization operating in the dark. The Aether Foundation had its own agenda. Lusamine was not interested in containment. She was interested in reunion, or revenge, or something in between, and she was willing to tear open the door to Ultra Space to get it. Looker eventually stepped back from the front lines. His body aged faster than his mind, worn down by years of chasing things that should not exist. But he never stopped watching. He left behind a legacy of protocols that would be used for years to come, a manual for how to handle the impossible. He taught the next generation that Ultra Beasts were not monsters to be hated. They were forces of nature displaced from their own reality. They were as lost as anyone. But that understanding did not make them less dangerous. And the people who suffered the most from their arrival were not the ones who fought them, but the ones who fell through the cracks between worlds. Looker knew their names. He kept their files in a separate drawer. The The ones who had touched a wormhole and survived, changed forever. The ones who had been pulled in and never returned. The ones who came back wrong, speaking in languages that did not exist, dreaming of cities that had no flaw. They were the silent cost of every successful capture, every closed portal. Every night the world slept peacefully, and their story is the one that Looker could never bring himself to write into the official record. It is the story of the Falas, and it is heavy enough to deserve an entire chapter of its own. The international police files we examined in the last chapter painted a picture of a world quietly on edge, of agents tracking sightings of things that didn't belong, but those files were clinical, distant. They recorded anomalies, not lives. Tonight, we step closer to the human cost of these dimensional fractures, because for every ultra beast that slipped through a wormhole, there was a person who fell the other way, and that person came back changed. Or they didn't come back at all. The Aether Foundation, for all its resources, was not the first organization to encounter a human who had passed through ultra space. That grim distinction belongs to a small classified incident involving a man named Nanu and a female officer whose name has been scrubbed from most records. Nanu, before he became the weary kahuna of Alola Island, was a member of the international police. He worked alongside Looker on some of the earliest extra-normal threat assessments, but there was one mission that broke something in him. A rift had opened near a remote Alolan coastline. It was brief, flickering, but enough. A female officer, young, determined, her career ahead of her, was caught in the surge of energy as the wormhole collapsed. She vanished. Nanu and the rest of the team searched for hours, assuming the worst. Then, 2 days later, she reappeared at the exact same spot, standing in the surf, staring at nothing. She was alive, but she was not the same. The distress in her eyes was not confusion. It was recognition. She had seen things in that other dimension, things that defied the physics of our reality. And more troubling, when the international police ran their scans, they found a faint signature clinging to her, a kind of residual energy that resonated at frequencies native to ultra space. They called it the Falas mark. It was invisible to the naked eye, but it was there, a beacon painted on her soul. For a while, they watched her. They hoped the mark would fade. It did not. And then the ultra beasts began to appear near her home. Not attacking, not immediately, just drawn like moths to a flame. The creatures of ultra space could sense that lingering energy from across dimensions. They found her. And when they found her, they did not simply observe. The incident ended in tragedy. The female officer, whose name we will not speak aloud out of respect, was killed by an ultra beast in her own living room. Nanu was the one who responded to the call. He arrived too late. All he could do was file a report that would be classified for years and carry the weight of that silence. He left the international police soon after. The mark on her body was gone, but the pattern was now burned into the organization's memory. This is the grim reality of being a Fala. You are a human being who has crossed a boundary not meant for flesh and blood. The experience itself can shatter your mind. Temporal disorientation, sensory overload, the haunting knowledge that another world exists just behind the veil. But the real terror begins when you return, because you are no longer merely a person. You are a signal, a living lighthouse broadcasting a frequency only the ultra beasts can hear. The Aether Foundation, in their later research, would confirm what Nanu's report had hinted at. The energy that clings to a Fala is not a simple residue. It is an imprint, a piece of ultra space embedded into the very structure of their cells. It cannot be removed without risking the host's life, and as long as it remains, the creatures of that dimension will be drawn to you, again and again, until they either take you back or destroy you. There is no known cure. Protection is only possible through isolation, constant surveillance, or, as the international police eventually attempted, containment. But containment is a prison. The Fala lives under a sentence of perpetual vigilance, knowing that at any moment the air might shimmer and a thing of impossible geometry might step through to claim them. This is the tragedy of the Falas. They are survivors of a journey no one should make, marked by a world that will not let them forget. And the organizations that study them, the International Police, the Aether Foundation, they have had to make impossible choices. What do you do with a person who is a beacon for interdimensional predators? How do you protect them without sacrificing their humanity? And how many more will fall before a solution is found? That solution would not come from passive study. It would require a desperate measure, a weapon forged from necessity. In the shadow of this tragedy, the International Police launched a protocol so classified that even its name was kept from most eyes. They called it Operation Beastball, and it would change everything. The beacon of a Fala is not simply a trace of the past. It is a continuous broadcast, a ripple in the fabric of reality that announces its presence to the creatures of ultraspace. For the International Police, tasked with tracking these disturbances across the Alola region, the presence of a Fala meant one thing: an ultra beast would soon follow. Every agent knew the protocol. Every village and city in the islands had a plan, however fragile. But a plan is only as strong as the tools available to execute it. And in the early days of the Ultra Beast incursions, the International Police found themselves terrifyingly unprepared for what was stepping through the wormholes. Standard Pokeballs, the cornerstone of capture technology throughout the known Pokémon world, failed completely. The reason for this failure is woven into the very nature of these creatures. A Pokeball works by converting a creature into a stream of pure energy, reading its unique signature and containing it within a stable miniature environment. This entire system relies on the target's energy signature being compatible with the physics of our dimension. An Ultra Beast, however, is a being native to ultraspace. Its atomic structure is tuned to a fundamentally different set of natural laws. When a standard ball attempted a lock on an Ultra Beast, the containment field could not find the handshake. The alien signature slipped through the gaps in the code. The ball would often shatter under the strain of the incompatible energy, or the beast would simply refuse the conversion and break free in an instant. It was not a failure of power, but a failure of language. The International Police realized they could not rely on the tools of the old world to face the threats of a new one. This harsh reality ignited the desperate development of specialized capture technology. The project was codenamed Operation Beastball. It was not a leisurely research initiative. It was a crash program born from the immediate ongoing crisis. In the wake of the tragedy that claimed the life of the female officer alongside Nanu and Looker, the International Police understood they could not simply subdue these creatures through brute force without causing unacceptable harm to the innocent people of Alola. The solution, they reasoned, had to be containment, capture. If they could seal a creature away long enough to study it, or to send it back through the wormhole, they might buy the world the time it so desperately needed. The result was the Beast Ball, a Pokeball variant that essentially brute forced the containment problem. It emitted a high-frequency suppression field designed to destabilize the Ultra Beast's form just long enough for a temporary lock to be achieved. It was a violent, inelegant solution, but it was a solution. But it is critical to understand the stopgap nature of the early International Police containment units. The Beast Ball is not a marvel of refined science. It is a desperate, functional tool, a piece of tactical duct tape applied directly to a dimensional rupture. It sacrifices the gentle capture protocol of a standard ball for an aggressive, high-energy suppression field. It works, but the capture rate was and remains deeply unreliable against the more powerful Ultra Beasts. An experienced trainer might catch a standard Pokémon with a well-timed Pokeball, but the Beast Ball was a gamble every single time. The materials required to create them were scarce, derived from the very crystals found near Ultra Wormholes. A trainer could not simply buy 100 Beast Balls. Each one represented a significant investment of resources and a significant risk. The international police regarded it as a temporary fix, a lock on a door that desperately needed a wall. They knew that simply throwing balls at the problem was not a long-term strategy. The creatures would keep coming, and the beast balls would eventually run out, and so the tactical deployment of agents to minimize civilian casualties in Alola became the primary focus of the entire operation. The islands themselves became the stage for a secret war. The international police, working closely with Captain Nanu, used his deep knowledge of the local terrain and the quiet, resilient nature of the Alolan people. They did not set up loud barricades or public evacuation drills. That would have caused panic and chaos. Instead, they worked in the shadows. A sudden road closure here, a festival quietly moved to a different date there. Agents posed as tourists, as researchers, as nothing at all. Their mission was not to hunt the Ultra Beasts, but to intercept them, to steer them away from population centers, to guide the beasts toward an isolated cliffside or an empty beach. Every engagement was a calculated risk, a quiet weighing of lives against the unknown. The battle was fought in silence, the only evidence left behind a few cracked rocks and an empty beast ball. The people of Alola owe a deep, silent debt of peace to these agents, a debt they will never know exists. But even as the beast balls fulfilled their desperate purpose, a deeper question echoed through the highest corridors of power. Capture was not a cure. The Aether Foundation, the very organization that had created the technology Mohn used to first explore ultraspace, understood this intimately. They knew that containment was a fragile defense against a recurring invasion. They knew the next breach could be larger, the next beast deadlier. The international police were fighting a defensive war with stopgap tools. The Aether Foundation was looking for an ultimate weapon, a solution that did not rely on a fragile field of energy. Deep within their facilities, a different kind of project was already underway. One that would not simply capture the intruders, but meet them in battle as an equal. The story of what they built there is the story of Project Beast Killer. The Beast Ball was a triumph of engineering, but it was never meant to be a solution. It was a stopgap, a tool designed to contain a threat that the international police and the Aether Foundation barely understood. And yet, even as the first prototype capsules were being tested, a far more ambitious, far more dangerous project was already underway deep within the bowels of the Aether Paradise research facility. A project that would push the boundaries of science, ethics, and the very definition of life itself. This was Project Beast Killer. The idea emerged from a simple, terrifying question. What if the beast balls failed? What if an Ultra Beast, or a swarm of them, breached containment? What if the wormholes opened not in remote areas, but in the middle of a city? The Aether Foundation's leadership, driven by Lusamine's obsessive fear and grief, concluded that they needed more than a capture device. They needed a weapon, a living weapon, a creature that could stand toe-to-toe with an interdimensional invader and win. The concept was audacious. Instead of trying to understand Ultra Beasts or find a peaceful coexistence, the Foundation chose to create a biological countermeasure. They would synthesize a new life form, one designed from the ground up for a single purpose: to kill gods, or at least, to kill creatures that felt like gods in their power and alien nature. The code name for this synthetic organism was Type Null, a placeholder that hinted at its experimental, unfinished state. The science behind it was a form of genetic alchemy. Researchers extracted DNA from dozens of Pokémon species, each representing a different type. They took the raw elemental essence of fire from a Charizard, the crystalline structure of ice from a Lapras, the ghostly ether of a Gengar, the psychic energy of an Alakazam. They mashed these genetic sequences together in a laboratory, hoping to create a chimera that could adapt to any threat by shifting its own type. The goal was a creature that could become super effective against any opponent, a Swiss Army knife of destruction. But nature does not forgive shortcuts. The early prototypes were disasters. The synthetic embryos would form and then destabilize, their cells rejecting the foreign DNA in violent, cascading failures. Some grew tumours, others simply dissolved into a soup of incompatible proteins. The researchers called it the stabilization problem. The life form they were trying to create was too powerful, too chaotic. It needed a restraint, a control mechanism. That restraint came in the form of a helmet, a heavy, metallic mask that clamped over the creature's face, suppressing its elemental energies and forcing its biology into a stable baseline. The mask was more than a muzzle. It was a prison. Without it, Type, Null would burn itself out, its own power tearing it apart from the inside. With it, the creature was docile, manageable, but also crippled. It could not access the very abilities it was designed to wield. The first successful birth of Type. Null was not a celebration but a somber realization. They had created a life form that could only exist in bondage. The moral implications of this project are haunting. The Aether Foundation, in its desperation, decided to bring a sentient being into existence solely as a tool for destruction. To Type, Null was not born of natural selection or random mutation. It was designed, engineered, and then shackled. Its entire existence revolved around the threat of Ultra Beasts. It had no purpose beyond combat. It had no autonomy, no future beyond the battlefield. The researchers who oversaw its creation must have felt the weight of that choice every time they looked into its eyes. If it even had eyes that could express such things. And yet the project continued. The helmet was refined. The genetic sequences were stabilized further. Type, Null could be produced in batches, though each individual required careful calibration. The Foundation now had a weapon, but it was a weapon that could never be fully trusted. It was a beast, wearing a mask, waiting for the moment when the mask would come off. That moment would come, but not in the way anyone expected, because Type Null was not the end of the line. It was only the beginning of a transformation that would redefine what a weapon could become. That transformation would be sparked by something small, something that no one in the Aether Foundation had accounted for, a spark of compassion, or perhaps a glitch in the programming, a relationship between a single creature and a human who saw it not as a weapon, but as a partner, and that relationship would lead to the creation of something the Foundation never intended. A being that could shed its mask and choose its own path. That story, the story of how Type, Null became something more, belongs to the next chapter. But first, you need to understand the mask itself, and the price that was paid to remove it. That is the tale of the Mask of Silvally. The Aether Foundation had achieved the impossible. They had spliced genetic material from across the entire taxonomy of Pokémon life, forging a chimera, a biological weapon designed with a single uncompromising purpose: to hunt down and neutralize an ultra beast. They called it Type, Null. The beast killer was born in a sterile lab beneath the artificial sun of Aether Paradise, a creature of immense potential, a living spear pointed at the heart of ultra space. But in the quiet moments after its creation, the scientists realized their greatest triumph was also their greatest terror. The power they had bottled inside this creature was not a tool, it was a storm, and storms by their very nature do not take orders. The problem was not what Type Null could do. The problem was that it refused to do it on command. The synthesis of so many conflicting types, the fusion of predatory instincts and defensive protocols, created a mind that was fractured. It was not a weapon that could be aimed. It was a wounded, angry thing, lashing out at everything around it, including its own creators. It possessed the raw, destructive force needed to tear an Ultra Beast apart, but it lacked the discipline to distinguish friend from foe. The Foundation concluded that the very thing that made it powerful, the chaotic recombination of DNA, made it useless as a controlled asset. The faithful soldier they had hoped for was nothing more than a berserker, and so, with a heavy resignation that tasted more of failure than of scientific loss, the order was given. Type Null was sealed away, placed into cryogenic stasis, deep within the Aether Foundation. A failed experiment. A god-killer locked in a frozen tomb. its power deemed too volatile to be allowed to roam free. But the Aether Foundation, true to its nature, could not simply abandon a project that had cost so much. Buried in the stasis logs, the data on type Null was still analysed. The solution, when it came, was not biological, it was mechanical. If the creature's mind could not be trained, they reasoned, then its power must be physically restrained. The answer was the mask. The limiter helmet, forged from a material dense enough to withstand the violent energy surging beneath it, was designed to suppress the creature's volatile power. It was a cage bolted directly onto the face of the beast. The mask clamped down over the RKS system, the unique organ that allowed type Null to alter its type composition. By sealing that system, the Foundation hoped to bring the creature's rage down to a manageable level. The mask made it safe. It also made it a shadow of what it was supposed to be. The beast was now docile, but it was also broken, its primary function neutered. It was a weapon without a firing pin. The mask was a prison, and the creature inside was a life sentence. There was one person who saw that prison, not as a failure of science, but as a crime of compassion. Gladion, the son of Lusamine, had grown up inside the clinical walls of Aether Paradise. He saw what his mother was becoming. He saw the cold, detached way she viewed life, as data, as assets, as specimens. He saw the creature in the mask, and he did not see a monster. He saw a reflection of his own trapped existence, driven by a desperate need to escape his mother's shadow and burn down her legacy. Gladion made a choice that would define his path. He infiltrated the secure labs in the dead of the Aether Foundation's quiet hours. He disabled the security protocols he had learned as a child, wandering these halls. He stood before the stasis pod of type Null, and he took it. Gladion did not just steal a weapon to use against his mother. He liberated a kindred spirit. He took the prototype beast killer, the one his mother had deemed a failure, and he fled into the wilds of Alola, becoming a rogue, a shadow, a boy and his beast running from the legacy of a broken family. On the run, something extraordinary began to happen. Gladion did not treat type Null as a tool. He treated it as a partner. He fed it. He fought alongside it. He protected it from those who would see it reclaimed by the Foundation. He gave the creature a name. He called it Silvally. The bond between the boy who had been discarded by his mother and the beast that had been locked away by his mother's science grew into something the Aether Foundation could never have programmed. It was trust. It was loyalty. It was love. And in the crucible of that genuine connection, the mask that suppressed Silvally's power finally broke, not because of a brute force override, but because it was no longer needed. With Gladion by its side, Silvally finally mastered the chaos inside itself. The RKS system activated for the first time since its creation. Silvally stood tall, not as a beast of burden forced into submission, but as a true culmination of the Beast Killer project. The triumph was not one of biology. It was the triumph of bond over biology. The creature that was created by science was ultimately saved by the heart. Silvally became the first Pokémon in existence that could change its type at will, a living arsenal tethered not to a command, but to a friendship. It became the weapon it was meant to be, but only because it was first loved. But while Gladion proved that the key to mastering an Ultra Beast was a bond of trust, the Aether Foundation was not interested in trust. They wanted guarantees. They wanted safety. And the man tasked with designing the tools for that safety was a researcher named Faba. Faba had watched the type Null project crumble. He had seen the creature escape, and he knew that relying on a living creature, even a friendly one, was a gamble the Foundation could not afford. The enemy came from another dimension. The human world needed a solution that did not depend on the whims of a monster's heart. Faba turned his ambitions away from creation and toward capture. He looked at the problem from a different angle. If you cannot control the beast, he reasoned, perhaps you can contain it. This line of thinking would lead to his greatest and most controversial invention, a device designed specifically to hold the impossible, a vessel for the stars themselves. Faba's ambition would soon give birth to the Beast Ball, The weapon was locked away. The mask was sealed. The Type Null project had ended not with a triumph, but with a failure buried in the deepest labs of Aether Paradise. Silvally was put into stasis, its potential deemed too volatile, its power too raw to be trusted. But the Ultra Beasts were still coming. The wormholes were still opening. The Aether Foundation still needed a way to fight back. A solution that did not rely on a living creature with a mind of its own. That solution would not be a war machine. It would be a cage. The responsibility for building that cage fell to a man whose ambition matched the scale of the threat. Faba, the branch chief of the Aether Foundation. If Lusamine was the heart of the organization, driven by a desperate search for a lost husband, Faba was its pride. He was a scientist of considerable skill, but skill alone was never enough for him. He craved recognition. He wanted his name etched into the history of dimensional research. He had watched the resources pour into Project Beast Killer, saw the attention lavished on Type Null and its mysterious mask, and he saw that project fail. For Faba, this was not a setback for the Foundation. It was an opportunity. He would build something that worked. He would be the one who solved the unsolvable problem. The problem he faced was not simply one of strength. Standard Pokeballs were ineffective against Ultra Beasts because the technology was built for this dimension. Every creature native to the Pokémon world shares a fundamental energy signature, a frequency that Pokeballs are designed to resonate with. An Ultra Beast is a walking impossibility. It does not resonate with our world. Its cells vibrate at a frequency that is completely alien, a haunting echo from ultra space. A standard Pokeball is a tuning fork perfectly calibrated for one specific song. An Ultra Beast is singing from a different universe. The fork shatters. Faba understood that brute force would never work. Trying to overpower an Ultra Beast with a stronger capture field was like trying to hold smoke with a tighter fist. The energy simply passed through, so he changed the approach entirely. He did not try to impose our world upon the creature. He learned to speak its language. The engineering behind the Beast Ball is a masterpiece of applied dimensional physics. Faba and his team analyzed the residual energy left behind by ultra wormholes. They decoded the specific signature of ultra space itself. The Beast Ball does not generate a generic containment field. It broadcasts a signal that perfectly mimics the environment of the creature's home dimension. To the Ultra Beast, being captured by a Beast Ball feels less like confinement and more like falling back through the wormhole. It is a sanctuary built from stolen light. The ball does not fight the creature, it harmonizes with it. The success rate against Ultra Beasts is remarkably high, simply because the Beast Ball is the only tool that offers them a place they instinctively recognize as safe. Of course, this hyper-specialization comes with a cost. The Beast Ball is almost useless against the native Pokémon of Alola. They cannot hear its song. Its frequency is noise to them. But for the job it was designed for, it is flawless. It became the standard for all dimensional containment operations within the Aether Foundation. Every agent, every capture team was equipped with the Beast Ball. It was the new rule of engagement for the war with Ultra Space. For Faba, the Beast Ball was his shield against obscurity. It was his proof that the human mind, specifically his mind, could conquer the chaos of the cosmos. He had succeeded where the war machine had failed. The Beast Ball was his legacy, neatly packaged in red and white. But the tool is only as good as its first true test. The first time a Beast Ball would be aimed at a living Ultra Beast was drawing near. The creature already approaching through a wormhole in the Aether Paradise lobby was not a brute. It was something far more subtle, far more dangerous. A creature of glass, acid and pure symbiotic instinct. The first contact. UB1 Symbiont, the Nihilego profile. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. Faba's Beast Ball was a masterful piece of engineering. a cage designed to contain lightning and silence the energy of a star. But the creation of a cage often presumes a deep understanding of the thing being caged. The Aether Foundation, in their frantic race to classify and neutralize the threats emerging from ultraspace, first had to confront the very nature of the creature that started their long nightmare. The first Ultra Beast ever catalogued by the International Police, the first entity to emerge from a stable Ultra Wormhole in recorded history, was a creature that defied simple classification. It was beautiful, translucent, and utterly alien. It was designated UB1 Symbiont. Its given name would be Nihilego. Nihilego appears as a drifting, crystalline jellyfish, its bell shimmering with an iridescent glow that seems to shift between the colour of a dying star and the deep blue of an ocean trench, far below any reach of sunlight. Long, graceful tentacles trail beneath it, not to sting with immediate lethality, but to seek. It is drawn to consciousness. It is drawn to emotion. Nihilego is not a predator in the traditional sense of the Pokémon world. It does not hunt to consume flesh or absorb energy directly. It hunts to bond. It is a symbiont, a creature of pure parasitic instinct, and the host it desires is any creature with a soul capable of dreaming. Its physical body is composed of a highly acidic, glass-like substance. Contact with its surface alone can cause severe burns. But the real venom, the true weapon of U1, is not physical. It is psychological. Nihilego administers a potent neurotoxin that directly targets the emotional center of the brain, the deepest wells of desire and memory within its host. This neurotoxin is the key to understanding the profound horror of Nihilego. It does not destroy its host in the way a fire burns a forest. It seduces the host in the way a slow tide erodes a cliff. The venom amplifies existing desires. It strips away restraint and inhibition. It creates a powerful, intoxicating euphoria, a profound sense of connection to the Ultra Beast. The host believes their wildest dreams are coming true. They feel powerful. They feel loved. They feel truly free for the first time in their lives. In reality, they are becoming a vessel. Their will is slowly, beautifully, replaced by the will of the symbiont. Nihilego filters their desires through its own alien logic, twisting love into obsession, ambition into tyranny, and curiosity into a reckless hunger for the void. The terrifying peak of this process in Lusamine. The president of the Aether Foundation, a woman already fractured by the loss of her husband Mohn, was the perfect host. Her love for him had curdled into a desperate, all-consuming obsession to find him at any cost, to cross into ultraspace and reclaim what was lost. Her love for beauty had twisted into a compulsion to preserve and control everything around her, freezing it in a perfect, silent state. She kept a collection of Pokémon, frozen in cryogenic stasis, preserved like trophies. She could not stand for anything to leave her. When Nihilego found Lusamine, it recognized a mind already primed for symbiosis. The fusion was immediate and absolute. Nihilego encased her body, its tentacles physically merging with her spine, its bell settling over her head like a crown. The neurotoxin flooded her system in a concentrated wave. The results were monstrous. Lusamine's eyes emptied of all humanity, reflecting only a cold alien light. Her hair turned white, the color of bleached bone, stark against the shimmering glass of Nihilego. Her skin took on a strange, translucent sheen. She no longer saw her own children, Lily and Gladion, as family. They became obstacles to her beautiful alien future. She spoke of freezing the entire world, of silencing every voice that was not her own. Nihilego had amplified her control issues to a cosmic scale. This is the symbiosis at its most terrifying. It was not a monster replacing a human. It was a human becoming a monster because their own deepest desires were weaponized against them. This is precisely why Nihilego is considered the most human of the Ultra Beasts, and paradoxically the most dangerous. Buzzwole is an animal driven by pure instinct to absorb energy. Pheromosa is a predator that relies on speed and vanity. Xurkitree is a force of nature, a wandering power line given form. But Nihilego understands us on a level the others cannot. It doesn't just break our bodies, It breaks our spirits by using our own dreams as the hammer, a beast you can fight with a Pokémon, a toxin that makes you happier than you have ever been, that gives you everything you ever told yourself you wanted. Even as it turns you into a hollow shell or an alien intelligence to pilot, that is a threat that cannot be punched or electrified. It requires an awareness of self that most people do not possess. It must be resisted from within, a war against your own reflection. Nihilego is the mirror held up to the human soul, and for those with cracks in their foundation, it is a reflection that utterly shatters them. The Aether Foundation, reeling from Lusamine's fall, learned a grim lesson about the subtle horrors of ultraspace. The Symbiont had been stopped, but the Ultra Wormhole did not close. The crisis in Alola was only beginning, as the forces of light and the international police scrambled to contain the fallout of the Nihilego incident. Another convergence was occurring. A different Ultra Beast was breaking through the dimensional barrier, one that did not care for the subtleties of the soul, one that saw the world not as a garden of desires to be harvested, but as a desert of energy to be drained dry. If UB1 was the poison of the mind, the next beast was the raw force of the body, a being of pure, unstoppable physical dominance, a creature whose presence demanded a response, not of psychological resistance, but of pure, immediate survival. We will look into the nature of that beast in the very next chapter, The Muscle and the Beauty, UB2. The previous chapter left us drifting in the gravitational field of Nihilego, a creature that did not simply attack the world it entered, but fundamentally rewrote the rules of connection from the inside out. That jellyfish neurotoxin, the way it twisted desire and loyalty until a human being became a hollow puppet for an alien survival instinct, suggested a very specific kind of horror, an intimate one, a violation of self that begins with a dream you do not remember asking for. But Ultra Space does not offer just one flavour of invasion. It offers a spectrum of disaster, and if Nihilego corrupted the internal landscape of a person, the two entities classified under the UB2 designation were designed to tear the fabric of the physical world apart through sheer biological presence. The international police logs recorded them as UB2 Absorption and U2 Beauty, two distinct code names sharing a single numeric slot. It reads as a clerical error at first glance, a quirk of an overworked classification system, but the deeper you look, the more it feels like a deliberate mirror, a juxtaposition so stark that it had to be catalogued together, because to separate them would be to lose the terrifying point that Ultra Space was trying to make. Consider Absorption first, the creature that the Aether Foundation would eventually name Buzzwole. The early reports from field agents, almost comical in their confusion. The entity resembles a mosquito, a common enough pest in the tropical climate of Alola, but it is scaled to a monstrosity that towers over a fully grown human. And yet the horror is not merely in its size or its proboscis, it is in its vanity. Buzzwole possesses an almost obsessive compulsion toward physical display. Witnesses reported the creature striking poses, flexing muscles that swell with an uncomfortable vascular pressure, as if it were performing for an audience that existed only inside its own head. But this is not vanity for the sake of ego. This is function. The act of absorbing energy, of draining the life force from the environment and from any creature unfortunate enough to cross its path, is intrinsically linked to this muscular exhibition. It is a creature of pure accumulation. It takes the vitality of the world around it and converts it into mass, into power, as it must then demonstrate to validate its own existence. There is no subtlety in Buzzwole. There is no negotiation. There is only the transaction of energy. And if you are standing in its light, you are the currency. It represents the bluntest extreme of biological evolution, the philosophy that survival is a numbers game, and the only number that matters is how much you can lift, how much you can hold, how much you can drain from the universe, before the universe has nothing left to give. Now look at the other half of this paired classification, beauty, Eramosa. If Buzzwole is the brute, the embodied statement of raw, accumulated power. Pheromosa is its polar opposite in every conceivable metric, a sleek white, predatory cockroach that moves with a grace that seems to defy the very concept of friction. Its speed is not simply fast by human standards. It is a blink, a skip in the recording of reality. The agents at the Aether Foundation noted something deeply peculiar about this entity, a behavioral tick that reveals the stark, almost aristocratic horror of its nature. Pheromosa refuses to touch the ground. It refuses to come into contact with anything it considers base or unclean. Our world, the soil, the water, the very air of the Alola region is filth to it, and this disgust is not a quirk or an aversion. It is a hunting strategy, a defense mechanism forged into a philosophy. It judges the world beneath its feet as unworthy of engagement. Pheromosa eliminates threats not by overpowering them or absorbing their essence, but by refusing to acknowledge them as relevant factors in its existence. It represents the extreme of efficiency. Why crush a bug when you can simply never allow the bug to touch you? Why fight the environment when you can move so fast that the environment never has a chance to react? It is evolution stripped of all unnecessary weight, focused entirely on the elegance of predation. It does not conquer, it dismisses. This is the fundamental truth of the UB2 dossier. They are not simply two different animals that happen to share a number. They are a thesis statement from ultraspace, a demonstration that the dimension from which they come understands evolution as a path to a single, logical, overwhelming extreme. On one end of the pendulum, you have the physical given absolute authority, a creature that becomes so dense, so swollen with absorbed life, that it can punch craters into concrete and treat a forest like a buffet. Buzzwole is the endpoint of a lineage that decided the only way to survive was to become bigger, harder, and more demanding than every other living thing in the room. On the other end, you have the abstract given absolute velocity, a creature so fast, so clean, so perfect in its biological disdain that it can turn the very act of being touched into an impossibility. Pheromosa is the end point of a lineage that decided the only way to survive was to be untouchable, to transcend the mud and the struggle entirely. One builds a fortress of flesh, the other denies the reality of the world it is forced to stand upon. Together, they do not just threaten the Alola region, they paint a picture of ultraspace as a dimension of focused, terrifying ideals. These are not mistakes of nature, they are answers to questions that our own evolutionary tree never had the courage to ask. And so, as the combined forces of the International Police and the Aether Foundation moved from the mind control of Nihilego and the philosophical war of the UB2 pairing, they braced themselves for whatever duality ultraspace would throw at them next. But the next entity on the list did not offer a duality. It offered a mystery that challenged the very definition of what a living creature could be. Logged as UB3 lighting, the phenomenon known as the Xurkitree entity defies the biological framework completely. It is not made of flesh or chitin or muscle. It is electricity given shape, a chaotic lightning storm that has somehow achieved singular consciousness and anchored itself into a physical form. Where Buzzwole requires energy to sustain its mass, Xurkitree simply is energy. Where Pheromosa avoids the dirt of contact, Xurkitree ingests the very concepts of power that run through our machines and our atmosphere. It is a creature that asks a question the previous Ultra Beasts never could. A question that will linger in the next chapter of this chronicle. What happens when a dimension produces a life form that does not need a world to survive, but simply needs a place to plug itself in? We just left the world of UB2, where muscle and beauty clashed in two opposite forms of aggression. Buzzwole, the towering insectoid bodybuilder, would drain the life force of anything it could grapple, flexing its impossible muscles as if the very act of absorption were a performance. And then there was Pheromosa, the elegant, almost graceful predator, so swift that it could cross a city block in a single bound, leaving a trail of broken glass and bewildered witnesses. Two ultra beasts, both classified under the same code, yet so different in their methods. But the next creature in this catalogue is something else entirely. It does not flex, it does not sprint, it hums, it glows. It stands still and waits, like a transmission tower that has decided it no longer wants to be merely a conduit for signals, but a living generator. UB3 lighting, the Xurkitree phenomenon. The first thing you would notice about this creature is that it does not look like a living thing, at least not in any way that a biologist from our world would recognize. Its body is a tangled mass of bright blue and yellow cables, each one as thick as a human arm, twisting and coiling around a central core that pulses with a faint electric light. It stands upright, roughly the height of an average human, but its shape is more like that of a gnarled, branching tree. The limbs are not arms and legs in the traditional sense, but flexible, wire-like appendages that can extend, contract, and even split into multiple filaments. At the top of this strange structure, there is a cluster of those cables that spread outward like a crown, or perhaps like the branches of a lightning-struck oak, and in the center of that crown, there is a single glowing orb, a kind of eye, that flickers with an internal luminescence. It does not blink. It simply stares, unblinking, as if it is processing the world through a current rather than a consciousness. This is the electric-type ultra beast known as Xurkitree, and it has no biological organs in the way we understand them. Its entire body is a living circuit. Its blood is electricity. Its thoughts, if it has any, are likely measured in volts and amperes. And it does not eat food. It does not hunt prey in the conventional sense. Instead, Xurkitree feeds by what scientists have described as rooting. It finds a source of electrical energy, a power plant, a substation, a city's main grid, and it inserts its wire-like limbs directly into the infrastructure. It does not simply absorb the energy that flows there. It drinks it. It siphons the current, the voltage, the very potential of the grid, channeling it into its own core, and while it feeds, it remains motionless, like a parasite attached to the arterial system of civilization. The first recorded encounters with Xurkitree in the Alola region were terrifying, not because of any overt violence, but because of the sheer scale of the disruption. A power plant on one of the outer islands would suddenly report a massive, unexplained drop in output. The lights would dim across the nearby town, and then flicker once before going dark, and in the main control room of that plant, workers would find the source of the problem. A bizarre, glowing figure made of cables, its limbs buried deep into the main transformers, its body humming with a low, resonant frequency. They would try to approach, but the air itself would become charged. Hair would stand on end. The smell of ozone would fill the room, and then, without warning, the Xurkitree would move. That movement is the real danger. For a creature that spends so much time motionless, Xurkitree can be startlingly fast, not in the way of a predator that chases its prey, but in the way of a loose electrical wire whipping through the air. Its limbs lash out with unpredictable, erratic motions, as if each cable has a mind of its own, and wherever those limbs touch, they discharge high-voltage electricity. A single contact is enough to stop a human heart, to melt metal, to ignite nearby materials. It does not seem to be aggressive in the way that Buzzwole is aggressive. It is not asserting dominance or defending territory. It is more like a force of nature reacting to a disturbance. When something touches it, the creature flails, and that flailing is deadly. There are reports from the International Police Archives from that early period before the Aether Foundation gave these creatures their proper names. One case file describes a team of officers attempting to contain a Xurkitree that had rooted itself into the main power line of a coastal town. They used insulated suits, non-conductive tools, and even a specialized containment barrier. But the creature, when startled by the approach of a drone, discharged a pulse of electricity that arsed through the entire substation. The barrier was useless. The suits, while they prevented direct electrocution, could not stop the sheer amount of energy being dumped into the surrounding environment. The entire block lost power for 3 days. and the Xurkitree simply withdrew its limbs and vanished into the night, leaving behind only scorch marks on the concrete and a persistent smell of burnt plastic. What is even more unsettling is the mystery of where Xurkitree comes from. Its home dimension is referred to in the Aether Foundation's classified notes as the Ultra Plant. Now that name is deceptively simple. When we hear the word plant, we think of green leaves, soil, photosynthesis. But the Ultra Plant is nothing like that. It is a world that appears to be composed entirely of electrical energy and cable-like structures. The ground is a lattice of conduits. The sky is a network of glowing filaments. And the air, if there is air, is thick with a constant, low-level hum. It is a place that feels more like the inside of a computer than a natural environment. And in that world, Xurkitree is not an anomaly. It is the native life form, adapted to a reality where electricity is as abundant as water is to our own planet. But how did it learn to root itself into our power plants? That is a question that still puzzles researchers. The Ultra Plant does not have power plants in the way we do. It has no turbines, no fossil fuels, no nuclear reactors. The energy is just there, flowing through the cosmic circuitry of that dimension. So when a Xurkitree comes through an ultra wormhole and finds itself in our world, it must somehow recognize that the metal boxes and spinning generators produce the same kind of current that sustains it. It must have some innate sense that allows it to detect electrical fields from great distances. And then, like a vine finding a trellis, it attaches itself and drinks. There is something almost tragic about this creature. It is not malicious. It does not want to hurt anyone. It is simply trying to survive in a world that is alien to it. And the only way it knows how to survive is by tapping into the lifeblood of our civilization. Its erratic movements are not attacks. They are the convulsions of a creature that is overloaded, confused, and frightened. When it's thrashing a monster. But perhaps, from its perspective, we are the ones who are strange. We are the beings who have wrapped the world in metal wires, and then get angry when something tries to drink from them. The UB3 lighting designation was given by the International Police during their early, panicked efforts to catalogue the beasts, but the Aether Foundation later named it Xurkitree, a portmanteau of circuit and tree, and that name captures the essence of the creature perfectly. It is a tree, but a tree made of circuits. It stands in one place for long periods, absorbing energy from the ground as a tree would absorb water. But the ground is our electrical grid, and the water is a stream of electrons. When you see footage of a Xurkitree, the footage is almost always dark, lit only by the creature's own glow. The cameras shake because the operator is standing at a safe distance, and even then, the static interference is so strong that the image often breaks up into a mess of noise. The sound is even more haunting. It is a low, continuous thrum, like a transformer at maximum load, but with a higher, almost vocal harmonic, a sort of squeal that rises and falls in pitch. Some researchers believe that this sound is the Xurkitree's equivalent of a heartbeat. Others think it is a distress call, a signal being sent back through the Ultra Wormhole to the Ultra Plant, to whatever it considers home. And that brings us to the biggest mystery of all. Is Xurkitree a lone wanderer, or are there others of its kind in our dimension? The Aether Foundation has captured and contained several specimens, but they never seem to move in groups. They are solitary creatures, each one attached to its own power source. But the Ultra Plant is not a place of isolation. It is a world dense with these life forms, a forest of electric trees. So why do they come through the wormholes one at a time? Is it simply because the wormholes are unstable and only allow single individuals through? Or is there a purpose, a reason why these particular beasts are sent to our world? We may never know the full answer. The Ultra Beasts, as a phenomenon, have not been seen in the generations following their initial appearance. The Ultra Wormholes have closed, or at least become so rare that no new sightings have been recorded. But the memory of Xurkitree remains, a ghost in the machine, a lightning strike that decided to stay. As we move deeper into this catalogue of dimensional invaders, The next pair of Ultra Beasts will take us from the realm of electricity to the realm of raw, uncontained force. Imagine a creature made entirely of steel and fire, or one that can reduce a building to rubble with a single swing. The next chapter explores those heavy hitters, the ones that were classified under UB4, but that is a story for another night. For now, let the image of that glowing, wire-bound tree linger in your mind, standing silent in the darkness, drinking the city's power, and humming a song from a world beyond our own. After the chaos of Xurkitree, after the image of its wire-like limbs plunging into the heart of a power plant and draining the very light from a city, you might think the Ultra Beasts had exhausted their capacity for the strange, but the classification system does not let up. UB3 was a lightning strike given form. UB4, however, is a study in raw weaponized physics, breaks down into two separate entries, and they could not be more different in scale. Yet they share a single, terrifying truth. They are optimized for destruction. Where Xurkitree was a creature of mad, chaotic energy, U4 introduces a new, colder logic. The code name for this entry is Blaster, and the creature that bears it is Celesteela. Now, to understand Celesteela is to abandon everything you think you know about the Steel type. In the Pokémon world, a Steel type is usually defined by its durability, its weight, its grounded metallic solidity. Aggron, Metagross, even the legendary Registeel, they are fortresses. But Celesteela is a rocket ship. Its biology challenges the very logic of its typing, because it is built not for defense, but for propulsion. It is a creature of massive scale, standing at nearly 30 feet tall, a towering colossus of gleaming, white metal that looks less like a living being and more like a launch vehicle. Its arms are immense boosters. Its body is a fuselage. It does not walk through the world like a traditional creature. It moves by firing jets of energy from its limbs, a rocket-like propulsion system that allows it to traverse the emptiness of ultraspace. Think about the implications of that. A Steel type that is primarily concerned with velocity. Its metallic biology is not just armor, it is a chassis. This is a creature that was designed by its dimension to break gravitational bonds. When it returns to the ground, it lands with the weight of a falling satellite. The sound it makes is not a cry, but the roar of an engine, a deep resonant hum that shakes the air around it. The sheer scale of Celesteela is overwhelming, but it is the intent that makes it truly horrifying. It is a living weapon. It can launch itself from the surface of one world and land on another. It carries enough kinetic energy to level a mountain range, and its signature technique, the move it is named for as an archetype, is a devastating beam of pure fire. But there is another half to UB4, and this is where the classification gets deeply unsettling. Because if Celesteela is the massive orbital strike, the other half of this heavy hitter is the surgical blade. That is the creature known as Kartana. The code name for Kartana is Cutter, and if Celesteela challenges our understanding of Steel types through its massive scale, Kartana challenges it through its microscopic precision. Katana is by all accounts a being of pure edge. It is impossibly small. It stands barely a foot tall. It is thin, described as being as sharp as paper, but that is a dangerous understatement. The Pokédex entries for Kartana are among the most chilling in existence. They describe a creature whose body is so sharp that it is constantly cutting itself. It cannot physically touch anything in the Pokémon world without slicing it. The sheer lethality of Kartana is completely inverse to its size. It looks like an origami figure, a delicate paper doll. For every single edge of its body is a blade that can cut through steel as if it were air. It does not swing its arms to attack. It simply moves, and anything in its path is divided. As there is a reason the international police filed this creature under a code that implies a tool. It is not wild. It is precise. It is a cutter. Its presence in battle represents a threat that is purely theoretical in the standard world. You cannot block it with physical walls. You cannot stand in front of it. You can only hope to be faster or to not be in its path when it decides to move. What is so fascinating about the duality of UB4 is that these two creatures, Celesteela and Kartana, represent the two extremes of a single lethal concept. One is the overwhelming force of mass and firepower, a living siege weapon that challenges the logic of organic life by turning itself into a machine. The other is the ultimate expression of sharpness, a being that exists to divide, a creature so small and so quiet that you might not even see it until you have walked through its space. They are both steel type, but they use that metal in opposite ways. Celesteela uses it to survive the friction of re-entry. Kartana uses it to exist as a perfect cutting tool. They are heavy hitters, not because of their level or their statistics, but because the universe designed them to be the answer to a specific problem. The problem is matter. Celesteela removes it by detonation. Kartana removes it by division. As you settle deeper into this thought, let the contrast settle between the image of that silent, floating colossus in the sky and the tiny, folded blade waiting in the tall grass. Both are inevitable in their own way. Both are UB4. And this pattern of pairing opposites, of coding two different apocalypses under one header, continues into the next chapter of this history. What do you do when a blade cannot cut and a blast cannot break? What happens when the Ultra Beasts stop trying to overwhelm you and instead decide to simply exist in front of you? That is the nature of the wall and the firework. The next classification explores that very question. Chapter 15 looked at the heavy hitters of Ultra Space, the two faces of UB4. There was Celesteela, the blaster, a living steel rocket ship that drifts through the cosmos. And then there was Kartana, the cutter, a piece of origami so impossibly sharp it can slice through steel as if it were paper. They represent a study in extremes, a reminder that Ultra Space produces entities perfectly adapted to utterly alien laws of physics. But the Ultra Beasts are not simply a collection of random monsters. They follow a specific cataloguing system, and that system continues with the final numerical designation we will look at tonight. This is UB5, a designation shared by two beings that could not be more different in form, yet are united by a single terrifying theme: the nature of existence itself. One is a wall of countless silent stones. The other is a firework that burns out completely every single time it attacks. Let us turn first to Stakataka the Wall. Its code name is Assembly, and that name is the entire key to its understanding. On the surface, it appears to be a simple wall made of brown and red bricks, a fortress, a structure. It stands roughly 11 feet tall, a looming barrier of stone. But Stakataka is not a singular creature. It is a collective, a colony. Each individual stone is a distinct life form, a separate consciousness, all bound together into a single gestalt entity. This is the architectural horror of Stakataka. It is a being built from hundreds or thousands of individual minds, all living in a single body, like a moving city, a hive made of rock. They do not simply exist together. They, the structure, the individual units communicate with each other, but their thought process, the gestalt of the assembly, is something we cannot fully comprehend. When one looks at a wall, one sees a flat surface. When Stakataka looks at the world, it sees through multiple sets of eyes, analyzing angles, predicting trajectories, thinking in pure geometry. The law suggests that the individual stones that make up Stakataka are incredibly cooperative, but they can also disagree. This tension, this internal debate happening inside a stone fortress, is the closest we get to understanding its alien psychology. It has a mind, but that mind is a committee of ancient, silent rocks. They chose to arrange themselves into this shape for a reason. Perhaps it is for stability. Perhaps it is for defense, or perhaps in their home dimension. This fortress form is simply the most efficient way to store consciousness. Stakataka moves slowly, deliberately, but it is always thinking. Every scrap of it is alive. Every brick holds a thought. And then there is the other side of UB5. If Stakataka is the wall, Blacephalon is the firework. It goes by the codename Burst. While Stakataka represents a slow, enduring collective, Blacephalon is a solo performer, an explosive individual. Its appearance is deeply unsettling. It looks like a clown, a strange bipedal clown with a massive colourful head like a giant ball. Its face is a mask of surprise, a wide painted smile that hides a terrifying secret. Blacephalon has adapted a hunting method that is unique among nearly all living things. It entertains its prey. It performs. It uses its bright colours and its bizarre bobbing movements to attract attention, to mesmerise. It is a predator that uses spectacle to confuse and draw in its victims. But this is where the hunt takes a dark turn. When Blacephalon has its prey's full attention, it does not bite or claw. It does not use a typical energy beam. Blacephalon attacks by detonating its own head. It is an explosion, a literal burst of fiery energy. The recorded data on Blacephalon states that it causes its own head to explode, launching a fireball that engulfs its target. The fireworks are not a metaphor. The creature literally blows itself up to attack. Now, of course, Blacephalon survives this. It regenerates. It collects its scattered pieces and reforms, turning its own near annihilation into a viable combat strategy. This is the definition of a high-risk, high-reward existence. Every battle is a suicide mission that it walks back from. Every single attack is an act of self-destruction followed by rebirth. This gives Blacephalon a chaotic, unpredictable energy. It is not fighting for survival in the same way we understand it. It is willing to sacrifice its form for a single devastating moment. The clown-like predatory tactics force us to reconsider laughter and joy. For Blacephalon, the jest is a lure, and the punchline is annihilation. It dances, it jests, and then it explodes. It is the only move it needs. Stakataka and Blacephalon, the wall and the firework. One is a slow accumulation of life, 1,000 voices speaking as one stone. The other is a violent shout, a single voice that destroys itself to be heard, then rebuilds itself to shout again. They are the closing brackets of the numerical Ultra Beasts, the end of the standard codes. After this, the cataloguing system breaks down into special cases. We have seen the Symbiont, the Absorber, the Beauty, the Lighting, the Blaster, the Cutter, the Wall and the Burst. Each of them has challenged our understanding of biology, of physics, of consciousness itself. But the story of Ultra Space does not end with these monsters of rock and fire. The Aether Foundation cataloguing system has one more deep mystery for us. One of the Ultra Beasts is not a fully evolved being. One of them is a child form, a creature that can actually bond with its trainer, a creature that can evolve, and a creature that completely changes the rules of what an Ultra Beast can be. This is the special case, the exception that proves the rule. The story of Poipole and its evolution into Naganadel is a story of growth, of adaptation, and of a bond that transcends the boundary between dimensions, where Stakataka is a house of stones, and Blacephalon is a firework of flesh. Poipole offers something entirely different, a doorway into the deeper secrets of how Ultra Beasts live, grow and travel. That is the mystery waiting for us in the next chapter. We left off last chapter discussing the final 2 known Ultra Beasts, catalogued under the standard UB codes, Stakataka, the living fortress made of individual stone life forms, and Blacephalon, the self-detonating clown-like entity whose explosive existence is both its greatest weapon and its only means of survival. Both are creatures of immense power and bizarre biology, but they share a fundamental trait with every other Ultra Beast we have discussed so far. None of them can evolve. They emerge from ultra wormholes fully formed, static in their biology, each a perfect specimen of its own enigmatic species. That is, until you reach the singular exception, the one Ultra Beast that captures what it means to grow, to change, to transition from a humble beginning into something far greater. That exception is Poipole, the UBSP, and its evolved form, Naganadel, the UBADI. Poipole stands apart from every other Ultra Beast, not because of its size or strength, but because it is the only one capable of what we would recognize as traditional evolution. This fact alone forces us to reconsider what Ultra Beasts truly are. The others are static, alien, almost artificial in their fixed forms. Nihilego does not metamorphose. Buzzwole does not mature into a larger version of itself, but Poipole, this small, vibrant, almost playful creature, possesses a biological pathway that leads to a radically different adult form, a transformation that mirrors the evolution in the ordinary Pokémon of our own world. Why would Ultra Space produce a creature that follows such a familiar pattern? The answer lies in the role Poipole plays in its home dimension. According to accounts gathered by the Aether Foundation and later explorers who ventured into the depths of Ultra Space, Poipole is not a rare, fearsome invader. In its native world, a world known to some as the Ultra Megalopolis, Poipole is considered something far more ordinary. It is the starter Pokémon of that dimension. Young explorers, researchers and travellers in Ultra Megalopolis begin their journeys with a Poipole by their side. Much like a child in the Pokémon world might choose a Charmander or a Piplup, this suggests that Poipole's capacity for evolution is not an anomaly but a necessity. It is designed to grow alongside its trainer, to develop new abilities and a new form as its bond deepens and its mastery of its own venom increases. In that sense, Poipole is a bridge between the chaotic, static Ultra Beasts and the familiar Pokémon we know. It is a creature of both worlds. The relationship between Poipole and its evolved form, Naganadel, is one of progression and liberation. When a Poipole evolves, it undergoes a dramatic transformation. Its body elongates, its tail extends into a long, sinuous appendage, and two massive stingers emerge from its head, dripping with potent venom. It gains the Dragon type, a classification almost unheard of among Ultra Beasts, and its poison typing becomes even more formidable. The evolution is not merely physical, it represents a coming of age. In the lore of Ultra Megalopolis, a Poipole that evolves into Naganadel is a sign that its trainer has earned the respect of its home dimension. The serpentine dragon form commands a presence that the playful Poipole never could. Its venom becomes a weapon capable of paralyzing entire ecosystems, yet it retains a fierce loyalty to those it trusts. The unique poison and dragon typing is not just a curious combination. In the Ultra Space ecosystem, Naganadel occupies a position near the top of the food chain. Its venom is so potent that it can dissolve the very fabric of other Ultra Beasts' bodies, allowing it to prey on creatures that would be invulnerable to physical attacks. The dragon type gives it an ancient, almost mystical quality, a connection to the dimensional energy that flows through Ultra Space itself. Some researchers have speculated that Naganadel's ability to learn Dragon Pulse is not just a learned technique, but a natural resonance with the raw power of the space it inhabits. When it fires a beam of draconic energy from its stinger, it is channeling the very essence of the dimension that birthed it. But what makes Poipole so special, so different from its fellow Ultra Beasts, that it was never meant to be a weapon or an invader. It was meant to be a companion. The other Ultra Beasts are forces of nature, alien and incomprehensible. Nihilego manipulates minds. Xurkitree drains power grids. Stakataka stands as an immovable wall. Poipole, however, forms bonds. It trusts. It grows. And when it evolves into Naganadel, it does not become a mindless predator, but a guardian, a protector of both its trainer and the fragile dimensional borders that separate its home from ours. This revelation casts the entire concept of Ultra Beasts in a new light. Perhaps not all of them are irreconcilable with the world of Pokémon. Perhaps Poipole and Naganadel represent a lost connection, a reminder that even in the chaotic, fractured realm of Ultra Space, there exists a blueprint for growth and companionship. The Ultra Megalopolis, the city that exists within that dimension, holds the key to understanding why Poipole was given the gift of evolution while others were not. And that city, with its towering spires and silent streets, is where our story must turn next. We left off with Poipole and Naganadel, the only Ultra Beasts capable of traditional evolution. But that peculiar family is not native to the worlds of Buzzwole or Xurkitree. Poipole comes from somewhere far stranger, a place where light is a memory, where an entire civilization huddles in perpetual twilight, and where the very architecture of reality is built around the absence of a sun. That place is the Ultra Megalopolis, and to understand it is to understand the deepest wound in Ultra space. The Ultra Megalopolis is a city, yes, but it is a city unlike anything in the Pokémon world. It exists in a dimension that once was warm and bright, a world with its own star, its own day and night, its own cycles of life, but that star had a name. It was called Necrozma, a being of pure primal light, and long ago, something happened that caused Necrozma to lose its form, to fracture, to become a creature of darkness. The light of the entire world was stolen, consumed, or perhaps shattered, and what remained was a cold grey sky, a sun that never rises, and a land bathed only in the faint glow of bioluminescent structures and artificial illumination. The people of this world, the Ultra Recon Squad, are not Pokémon. They are human, but they are humans who have adapted to a life without natural light. Their skin is pale, their eyes large and sensitive, their bodies slender. They dress in sleek, form-fitting suits that seem to absorb and redirect what little energy exists around them. They are a civilization that has learned to live in the aftermath of a catastrophe they barely remember. A catastrophe that took their sun and left them with only legends of a time when the world was bathed in gold. The Ultra Megalopolis itself is a marvel of survival engineering. It is built into a massive crystalline cavern. The walls aglow with strange mineral veins that pulse like a heartbeat. The city is vertical, with towers that seem to grow from the rock itself, interconnected by bridges of solidified light, or what passes for light in this dimension. The architecture is smooth, organic, almost like the interior of a giant sea creature. There are no sharp edges, no straight lines. Everything curves and flows, as if the city was grown rather than built. And in the center of it all, there is a great empty bastion, a fortress of black crystal, where Necrozma once stood. The Ultra Recon Squad is the governing body, the exploration team, and the hope of this world. They are led by two individuals, a man named Dulce and a woman named Zossi. They are calm, methodical, driven by a single purpose to restore the light. Their mission is not conquest, not invasion, but salvation. They have discovered that Necrozma, now a shadow of its former self, has retreated to the Pokémon world, where it feeds on the light of Alola, and so they have crossed the wormholes, searching for a way to return Necrozma to its original state. They are not aggressors. They are refugees, scientists, and pilgrims, all at once. The culture of the Ultra Recon Squad is one of quiet urgency. They speak in measured tones, their movements precise, their technology advanced, but not ostentatious. They have no art of frivolity, no music for pleasure. Their songs are hymns to the lost light. Their stories are warnings about the darkness. They raise Poipole as companions, creatures that can evolve into Naganadel, beings that carry a fragment of the old light within their stingers. Poipole are not pests or monsters. They are cherished, almost sacred, for they are a living link to the world that was. When you visit the Ultra Megalopolis, as the player character does in Pokémon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, you are struck by the silence. The city is not abandoned, but it feels hollow. The inhabitants move with a purpose, but there is no laughter, no shouting, no casual chatter. Every conversation is a briefing. Every glance is a calculation. This is a civilization that has been in survival mode for so long that they have forgotten how to do anything else. They have no time for joy, because joy requires light, and light is what they have lost. But there is a mirror here, a reflection of the Pokémon world's own future. Think about it. The Pokémon world has its own sun, its own Necrozma, the legendary beasts that govern light, time and space. What if something happened to Solgaleo or Lunala? What if the light of Alola itself were to be drained? The Ultra Megalopolis is a cautionary tale. A civilization that reached too far, that tried to harness a power they could not control, and ended up destroying the very source of their existence. In the Pokémon world, the Aether Foundation, the International Police, even the player, they all play with the same fire. They open wormholes, they capture ultra beasts, they weaponize creatures that are not of their dimension. The Ultra Megalopolis shows us what happens when that gamble fails. And yet, there is hope. The Ultra Recon Squad has not given up. They have a plan. They believe that by capturing Necrozma in the Pokémon world and bringing it back to its home dimension, they can restore the light. But that plan requires help. Help from a trainer, from a world that still has sunlight, a trainer who can wield the power of the Z crystals, the very crystallized light of Alola. And so they recruit you, the player, to be their emissary, their warrior, their bridge between worlds. In the depths of ultra space, in the heart of a city that has forgotten the color of the sky, the Ultra Recon Squad works tirelessly. They monitor the wormholes. They study the behavior of ultra beasts. They train with their Poipole, hoping that one day, the evolution of their companions will be a sign that the light is returning. And when you stand on the highest platform of the Megalopolis, looking out into the eternal gloom, you understand why they are so desperate. There is no sunrise here. There is no sunset. There is only the cold, unwavering glow of the crystals that keep the darkness at bay. And if the crystals ever fail, the darkness will win. This is the world that gave us Poipole, Naganadel, and the ghost of a sun that once was. It is a world that lives in the shadow of its own past, a world that has turned survival into an art form. But it is also a world that has not forgotten hope. The Ultra Recon Squad carries hope with them like a fragile ember, guarded against the winds of despair. And that hope is what drives them across dimensions, into our world, into the light, to ask for our help, and to teach us what it means to lose everything, and still keep going. Because in the end, the Ultra Megalopolis is not just a city in another dimension. It is a mirror held up to our own. The Pokémon world has its own sun, its own light, its own abundance, but abundance can be taken for granted. The Ultra Megalopolis whispers to us, cherish the light while you have it, because it can be stolen. And that leads us to a deeper question. What exactly is the ecology of ultra space? How do these creatures, these civilizations, these broken suns, all fit together in a universe that seems to be built on paradox and loss? That is the mystery we will explore next, as we turn our gaze from the city of eternal twilight to the very fabric of the dimension that holds it all together. The civilization of Ultra Megalopolis once thrived under a light that was not their own, a borrowed radiance from Necrozma, a being of pure prismatic energy. When that light was consumed, the society crumbled into darkness, leaving behind only the husk of a world and its desperate nocturnal survivors. But that city was just one corner of a far stranger kingdom. Beyond the towers of Ultra Megalopolis lies a vast, fractured dimension, collectively as ultra space, a realm that does not operate by any rules we recognize. It is not a single landscape, but a patchwork of subdimensions, each one a separate pocket of reality, with its own physics, its own ecosystem, and its own unique horrors. To understand the ultra beasts, we must first understand the worlds that shaped them. When researchers first peered through an ultra wormhole, they expected to find a single, unified dimension. Instead, they discovered something far more unsettling. Ultra space is less like a solar system, and more like a shattered mirror, each shard reflecting a different kind of existence. Among the most documented of these subdimensions are the Ultra Desert and the Ultra Jungle, two environments that could not be more alien to each other, or more hostile to life as we know it. But for the creatures born there, these places are home, and the very conditions that would kill a normal Pokémon are exactly what made the Ultra Beasts the forces of nature they are today. Let us first walk through the Ultra Desert. Imagine a world of endless dunes, but not made of sand. The ground here is a fine metallic dust that glimmers under a sky permanently stained orange by high-energy solar radiation. There is no water. There is no wind in the traditional sense. Only a static charge that crackles across the landscape, occasionally sparking into arcs of lightning that scar the horizon. Temperatures swing from searing heat during the perpetual daylight cycle to a bitter cold that would shatter most organic matter. On Earth, no Pokémon could survive here for more than a few minutes. Yet in the Ultra Desert, a creature thrives. This is the home of Stakataka, the wall-like Ultra Beast that appears to be a simple pile of stones, but those stones are alive. Each brick is a separate consciousness, a colony of individual organisms that have learned to stack themselves into a single, immobile fortress. Life in the Ultra Desert is harsh, and the greatest threat is not predation, but the environment itself. To survive, Stakataka evolved not to move quickly, not to hunt but to endure. Its stone-like body offers protection from the radiation and the temperature extremes. The colony structure allows it to absorb impact from falling debris and to share resources across its many units. And because there is almost nothing to eat in the desert, no plants, no prey, no organic matter, Stakataka has adapted to feed on static electricity and trace minerals drawn from the metallic dust. It does not hunt, it simply exists, and its existence is a testament to the brutal efficiency of ultra-space evolution. Now consider the Ultra Jungle, a place that sounds like a paradise compared to the desert, but is every bit as dangerous. Here the air is thick with humidity and a faint bioluminescent fog that glows in shades of violet and cyan. The vegetation is not based on chlorophyll. The plants here are crystalline, their leaves sharp as glass, their trunks hollow and filled with a corrosive sap that can dissolve flesh on contact. The sky is a permanent twilight, lit by the glow of the crystalline flora and by the occasional flare of distant, unnatural lightning. There is no conventional food chain. Instead, everything in the Ultra Jungle is either a predator or an energy source, and in this environment we find Buzzwole, the muscular mosquito-like Ultra Beast. Its enormous swollen limbs are not for show. In the Ultra Jungle, power is the only currency. Buzzwole uses its strength to tear open the crystalline plants and drain the energy stored within their cores. But it is also a predator of other Ultra Beasts, or at least of the smaller creatures that wander into its territory. Its needle-like proboscis is designed to inject a paralytic agent and then absorb the internal fluids of its prey. In the Ultra Jungle, speed and stealth are secondary to raw, overwhelming force. Buzzwole evolved to dominate its environment through pure physical might, and its massive, swollen muscles are a direct adaptation to a world. Every encounter is a struggle for energy. What is remarkable about both of these sub-dimensions is what they lack. There are no traditional Pokémon in the Ultra Desert or the Ultra Jungle. No Pidgey, no Rattata, no Caterpie. The ecosystems of Ultra Space do not follow the patterns on Earth, or even on the various regions of the Pokémon world. There are no breeding seasons, no migration cycles, no concept of a food web based on plants and herbivores. Instead, the Ultra Beasts exist in a state of constant competition for a single scarce resource: energy, and not just any energy. The type of energy that can sustain their strange, extradimensional biology. In Ultra Space, sunlight is rare or non-existent. There are no berries, no rivers of fresh water, no soil for plants to grow. The only way to survive is to absorb energy from the environment directly, whether it be static electricity, the heat of the ground, or the life force of other beings. This scarcity drives everything about Ultra Beast behavior. It is why they enter our world through Ultra Wormholes. Our dimension, with its abundant sunlight, water, and biological matter, is a treasure trove for these starving creatures. They are not evil, they are hungry. The lack of traditional Pokémon rules extends even to how Ultra Beasts reproduce and grow. In the Ultra Desert and Ultra Jungle, there are no eggs, no nurseries, no parental care as we understand it. Most Ultra Beasts are born fully formed, emerging from the energy of the dimension itself. Nihilego, the first Ultra Beast encountered, is a symbiont, not a predator in the conventional sense, but a being that latches onto a host and feeds on their emotions and life force. It does not need to hunt for food in the way a predator does. It simply needs a living being to attach to. That behavior makes perfect sense in Ultra Space, where the only living things are either Ultra Beasts themselves or the strange energies that animate the landscape. But on Earth, Nihilego's behavior becomes tragic. It attaches to trainers, to Pokémon, even to humans like Lusamine, and it drains them without meaning to cause harm. It is simply following the only rule it knows. Find a source of energy and hold on. Another example of this alien ecology is Kartana, the ultra beast known as UB4 Cutter. Kartana inhabits a sub-dimension that is essentially a forest of blades. Its entire world is sharp, metallic and angular. The atmosphere is thin and gravity is weak. To survive there, Kartana evolved a body that is impossibly thin and light, able to slice through the crystal structures of its environment with ease. It does not eat in any way we would recognize. Instead, it absorbs energy through the friction of its own movements, converting kinetic energy into sustenance. In the ultra forest, if we can call it that, every surface is a potential meal, and Kartana's razor-sharp edges are not weapons but tools for feeding. On Earth, however, its cutting ability becomes a terrifying hazard. A single accidental brush against Kartana can sever a limb. The Ultra Beast does not mean to hurt anyone. It is simply trying to graze on the strange materials of our planet. The scarcity of resources in ultra space creates a unique evolutionary pressure. Every Ultra Beast must be either incredibly efficient at gathering energy or capable of surviving on almost nothing. Celesteela, the rocket-like being, spends most of its life dormant, storing energy for a single, explosive burst of movement. In its subdimension, a realm of floating islands and endless vacuum, Celesteela drifts for years without any input, conserving every joule. Then, when it detects a concentration of energy, perhaps a star, perhaps an ultra wormhole, it ignites its thrusters and launches toward that source with devastating speed. Its body is essentially a biological spaceship, adapted to travel between dimensions in search of the energy it needs to reproduce. Because in ultra space, movement itself is a cost, and only the most efficient travelers survive. Xurkitree, the living power line, inhabits a sub-dimension that is effectively a storm. Constant electrical discharges fill the air, and the ground is a network of conductive minerals. Xurkitree is not a creature in the way we think of animals. It is more like a walking lightning rod, its body composed of conductive tendrils that absorb and store electricity. In its world, electricity is as plentiful as air, and Xurkitree has evolved to become virtually immune to that environment. But when it comes to Earth, it finds our power plants irresistible. Not because it wants to cause blackouts, but because the concentrated electrical current is like a feast to a starving creature. It roots itself into the grid and feeds, unaware that its feeding disrupts entire cities. What this all reveals is that the Ultra Beasts are not monsters. They are refugees from worlds so alien that we cannot comprehend their needs. The sub-dimensions of ultra space are not just different landscapes. They are different laws of physics, different realities. In the ultra jungle, gravity is slightly weaker. In the ultra desert, time seems to move at a different pace. And in all of them, the concept of a Pokémon with type matchups and evolutionary lines simply does not apply. The Ultra Beasts are exceptions to every rule we know. They do not evolve through experience or stones. They do not have personalities in the way we understand. They are shaped entirely by the harsh, resource-poor environments that birth them. And yet, there is one place in ultra space that is different. A realm where something resembling civilization once existed. That is Ultra Megalopolis, which we explored in the last chapter. But even that city is a shadow of what it was. A remnant of a world that tried to harness the power of a being beyond its understanding. The people of Ultra Megalopolis built their society around Necrozma, using its light to sustain themselves. When that light was taken, their world collapsed, and that collapse led to a desperate experiment, an attempt to reach into another dimension, to find a new source of light, a new world to plunder. That experiment did not go unnoticed. The Aether Foundation on Earth had already been watching these wormholes. They had already begun their own research, and soon the two worlds would collide in an incident that would change everything. But that is a story for the next chapter. For now, rest in the knowledge that the Ultra Beasts are not invaders. They are survivors from a broken universe, drifting through the cracks of reality, looking for a place to call home. We have traced the ecosystems of Ultra Space, from the scorching sands of the Ultra Desert to the tangled canopies of the Ultra Jungle, and seen how each environment sculpted the Ultra Beasts that call it home. But understanding their ecology is one thing. Witnessing what happens when those environments bleed into our own is quite another. And that is precisely what occurred during an event that would come to be known simply as the Aether Paradise Incident. For months, Lusamine, the president of the Aether Foundation, had been consumed by a single, obsessive goal. She had discovered that Cosmog, the small, fragile creature her husband Mohn had once found, possessed the ability to tear open portals to Ultra Space when placed under extreme stress, and she intended to use that power, not to explore, not to study, but to make contact, to find Mohn, or at least to prove he was still out there, somewhere in the void. Her fixation had twisted her understanding of Ultra Beasts. She no longer saw them as invasive threats. She saw them as beautiful as kindred spirits. She wanted to merge their world with hers. And so, on a quiet day at the man-made island known as Aether Paradise, she put her plan into action. Using Cosmog, she forced open a massive ultra wormhole directly above the facility. The portal was not a thin slit or a brief tear, it was a chasm, a rift in the sky that stretched wide enough to swallow the entire island in shadow. The air itself seemed to warp, bending light into strange refractions, and from that gaping wound in reality, the first Ultra Beast descended. It was Nihilego, the Symbiont, the same creature that had likely lured Mohn into the void years before, but it was not alone. The wormhole did not close after one visitor. It stayed open, and through it poured a torrent of invaders. Buzzwole, the absorption beast, landed on the artificial beaches with a thunderous impact, its insectoid muscles gleaming. Pheromosa streaked across the sky like a comet, leaving trails of shimmering light. Xurkitree, a tangled mass of glowing wires, rooted itself into the island's power grid, drawing energy from the very generators that kept the facility alive. And then came Celesteela, the massive rocket-like creature, hovering ominously above the main dome, its cannons humming with stored plasma. The chaos was immediate and total. The Aether Foundation's security, despite their advanced beast killer project and their specially designed beast falls, was overwhelmed. The Ultra Beasts did not attack with malice. They simply reacted to their new environment. Buzzwole drained the life force from every plant and Pokémon it encountered. Pheromosa chased down anything that moved, its speed making escape impossible. Xurkitree turned the island's electrical systems into a playground, sending sparks and surges through every corridor. Celesteela simply floated, its gravity altering the tides around the island. In the middle of this pandemonium, a young trainer, the player character, had arrived at Aether Paradise under the guidance of Professor Kukui and the Island Guardians. This was their first direct confrontation with the entities in their home turf. Not as wandering beasts in the wild, but as an organised incursion. The player fought through the chaos, using the legendary Pokémon Solgaleo or Lunala to push back the wave of Ultra Beasts. They climbed to the top of the facility, where Lusamine stood beneath the still open wormhole, her eyes glassy with obsession. She had merged with Nihilego, its translucent body fusing with her own, granting her a terrifying alien power. But even as the player defeated her, the wormhole remained. It was Lily, Lusamine's daughter, who finally convinced her mother to release Cosmog, allowing the portal to close. The fallout of the incident was catastrophic. The Aether Foundation, once a pillar of scientific prestige in Alola, was shattered. Lusamine was hospitalized, her mind scarred by the Nihilego's influence. Faba, the lead researcher, was exposed for his unethical experiments, including the creation of Type Null. The organization effectively collapsed, its resources redirected to containment and cleanup. The public's trust in the Foundation evaporated. Ultra wormholes continued to appear across the region for weeks, but the coordinated effort to seal them began in earnest. That cleanup, that long process of restoring balance to Alola, would become its own chapter. The aftermath was not just about catching stray Ultra Beasts. It was about understanding the fragility of the boundaries between dimensions and the cost of a single person's obsession. And it would fall to the international police, the island guardians, and the player to ensure that Alola never faced such a crisis again. The chaos of the Aether Paradise incident had finally subsided. The massive wormhole above Alola had been sealed. Lusamine was safe, and the immediate threat was over. But the story did not end with the closing of that rift. The aftermath was a quiet, patient kind of storm. Across the 4 islands, reports began to trickle in from ordinary people. Fishermen who saw strange lights flickering over the ocean at midnight. Hikers who heard a sound like metal scraping against stone deep in the caves of Ulaula. Children who swore they saw a glowing jellyfish floating through the mist of a mountain spring. The Ultra Beasts that had been pulled through during Lusamine's experiment were still here. They had scattered, hiding in the wild corners of Alola, confused and alone, and someone had to find them. That someone was not the Aether Foundation, at least not directly. Instead, the task fell to a small, unlikely team. You, the player who had already faced these creatures once. Lukka, the international police agent with a weathered coat and a tired smile, and Nanu, the kahuna of Ulaula Island, who had once worked with Lukka on a case that ended in tragedy. The 3 of you became a cleanup crew. No grand battles, no world-ending stakes. Just a quiet, methodical hunt across the islands to locate every remaining Ultra Beast and bring it into custody. It was the kind of work that rarely makes headlines. The kind that happens after the credits roll. The kind that requires patience and a gentle hand. Lukka had a theory about these creatures. He called them refugees. He had seen the way they moved, the way they reacted to the world of Alola. They were not invaders, they were lost. Think about it. A being from a dimension of pure electricity suddenly dropped into a forest of trees and water. It would not know how to behave. It would lash out, not out of malice, but out of fear and confusion. The same was true for Nihilego, for Buzzwole, for every beast that had slipped through the wormhole. They were stranded, and their strange biology made them a danger to themselves and to the native ecosystem. So the task became one of capture, not destruction, and capture was not straightforward. Standard Pokeballs were almost useless. The Beast Balls that Faba had developed, those specialized capsules designed for interdimensional beings, were the only reliable tool, but even they had limits. You had to weaken the Ultra Beast first, and that meant battling them. But here was the ethical dilemma that weighed on every encounter. Were you really justified in capturing these creatures? They had done nothing wrong. They had not chosen to come to this world. They were simply the victims of a dimensional accident, yet leaving them free would only lead to more incidents, more harm, more confusion for both human and Pokémon alike. There was no perfect answer. There was only the painful middle ground of doing what had to be done. Nanu understood this better than most. He had seen the cost of these encounters firsthand years ago, when he and Lukka and another officer had tracked an Ultra Beast through Alola. That officer, a woman whose name is never fully spoken in the records, had been killed. Nanu carried that guilt with him, and it shaped his approach now. He was not interested in grand gestures or heroics. He was interested in preventing another death. So he worked alongside Lukka and Yu, not as a commander, but as a quiet guide. He knew the islands. He knew the places where a confused creature might hide. He knew when to wait and when to act. And he knew that the only way to do this right was to move slowly, to observe, to understand the creature's behavior before making a move. One by one, the Ultra Beasts were found. Nihilego was located near the ruins of the Aether Foundation itself, still drifting near the place where the wormhole had been. It was almost docile when you approached, as if it recognized that its portal home was closed. Buzzwole had taken up residence in a remote area of Melemele, flexing its massive arms against the trunks of trees, trying to absorb energy from a world that did not provide the right kind. Pheromosa was found on Pony Island, its sleek form racing across the cliffs at speeds that left after images in the air. Xurkitree had tangled itself in the power lines of a small village, causing blackouts. Celesteela and Kartana were discovered together in a hidden valley, one standing like a silent rocket, the other like a folded blade left behind by some forgotten giant. Stakataka had assembled itself into a wall on a lonely stretch of beach, watching the tide with 1,000 unblinking eyes. Blacephalon, the firework clown, was the hardest to track. It would appear, explode in a burst of light, and then vanish, leaving only a faint smell of ozone and ash. You did not simply catch them and forget them. Each capture was documented. Looker took notes. Nanu offered a grunt of approval, and you released the beast into the custody of the International Police, who had set up a special containment facility, a place where they could be studied, cared for, and perhaps someday returned to Ultra Space. But that was a long shot. The technology to open stable wormholes was still imperfect, and so the Ultra Beasts remained in limbo, neither free nor imprisoned, held in a delicate balance between worlds. When the last beast was captured, Looker gathered the data and compiled the final classification of the original 10 Ultra Beasts. It was a list that would become the official record. Nihilego, Buzzwole, Pheromosa, Xurkitree, Celesteela, Kartana, Stakataka, Blacephalon, and the special case of Poipole and its evolution Naganadel. 10 beings from another dimension, each with its own code, its own name, its own story. They were no longer a mystery. They were catalogued. They were known. But the cleanup effort also revealed something deeper. As you worked alongside Looker and Nanu, you began to notice patterns. The Ultra Beasts were not random. They were connected. And at the center of that connection was a name that had been whispered in the old texts of Ultra Megalopolis. Necrozma, the beast that had once stolen the light from an entire dimension. The beast that had been imprisoned, broken, and forgotten. The beast that was still out there, waiting. The wormhole had been closed, the refugees had been gathered, and Alola was safe. But the shadow of that name lingered. It hung in the air like the last note of a forgotten song. And somewhere in the depths of Ultra Space, something stirred. The work was not done. It had only just begun. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. The cleanup missions in Alola were meticulous, methodical. Looker and Nanu, alongside the player, traversed the islands, sealing ultra wormholes and capturing the stragglers, those ultra beasts that had slipped through during the chaos of the Aether Paradise incident. Each capture felt like closing a door, but some doors once opened, never fully shut. The wormholes themselves were scars in the fabric of reality, and as the last of the rogue beasts were secured in beast balls, a deeper question lingered. What was the engine behind these portals? What force, what entity, was powerful enough to pry open the dimensions themselves? The answer lies in a being that blurs the line between Pokémon and Ultra Beast, a creature of myth and light and hunger, Necrozma, the Prism Pokémon. But is Necrozma truly an Ultra Beast? The classification is debated even among the most learned researchers. On one hand, Necrozma is native to Ultra Space, specifically to the dimension known as Ultra Megalopolis. It shares the origin with other Ultra Beasts, and its body is composed of an otherworldly substance, a crystalline, light-absorbing material that doesn't behave like ordinary matter. On the other hand, Necrozma possesses a level of consciousness, a sentience, and a sheer cosmic significance that far exceeds any other Ultra Beast. It is not merely a creature, it is a force, a collapsed star in the shape of a Pokémon. The International Police never assigned it a UB code, and the Aether Foundation lists it separately in their archives. Perhaps the simplest way to understand Necrozma is as the original Ultra Beast, the progenitor from which all others draw their mysterious energy. Long before the events of Sun and Moon, Necrozma was a being of pure light. It was the bringer of light to the Alola region, a time when the archipelago was nothing but darkness and shadow. The ancient peoples of Alola worshipped Necrozma as a benevolent sun, a radiant prism that scattered its brilliance across the islands, allowing life to flourish. But Necrozma's light was not infinite. It was a finite resource, and the more it gave, the more it diminished. Over centuries, its luminosity waned, and the people of Alola, perhaps out of gratitude, perhaps out of desperation, began to draw upon that light for their own purposes. They forged Z crystals from Necrozma's spilled energy, artifacts that could channel its power into devastating moves. But the harvest was too great. Necrozma was drained, its core fractured. The catastrophic loss of its power triggered a transformation. Necrozma, once a radiant being, collapsed into a dark, light-starved husk. It became a black hole, an entity of pure gravitational hunger, pulling in every photon and every source of illumination it could find. Its form twisted, hardening into the jagged, obsidian-like structure we recognize today. This new Necrozma was no longer a giver of light, it was a taker. It began to wander ultraspace, driven by an insatiable need to reclaim what had been stolen. And in its wanderings, it discovered the Ultra Wormholes. The connection between Necrozma and the Ultra Wormholes is profound. It is not merely that Necrozma can create these portals. It is that its hunger for light is the very force that tears open the fabric between dimensions. When Necrozma senses a source of light, it pushes against reality, creating cracks through which it can reach out. These cracks become Ultra Wormholes. The more intense its hunger, the larger and more unstable the wormholes become. This explains why the wormholes around Alola grew so violent during the Aether Paradise incident. Necrozma was drawing closer, attracted by the immense burst of light from Lusamine's experiments. The Ultra Beasts that poured through were not invaders. They were refugees, fleeing the gravitational wake of Necrozma's approach. Or perhaps they were scavengers, trailing behind a predator, hoping to feed on the scraps of energy it left behind. Necrozma's descent into a black hole state is not a tragedy of malice but of exhaustion. It is a creature that was once the lifeblood of a world, and now it is a spectral vacuum, forever chasing the light it lost. Some researchers believe that if Necrozma could ever be fully restored, if it could absorb enough light to reignite its core, it might return to its original form. But that would require stripping entire worlds of their suns. The Ultra Megalopolis, the civilization that once worshipped Necrozma, was left in permanent twilight after its departure. They built their society around the dim glow of artificial light, always fearing the day Necrozma would return to consume what little remained. This brings us to the next layer of the mystery, the Z crystals. These artifacts are more than mere battle tools. They are fragments of Necrozma's original light, crystallized and bound to the natural energy of Alola. The same energy that powers the Z moves is the energy that Necrozma craves. And if that energy can be harvested, channeled and focused, what might it unleash? The answer lies in the deepest vaults of the Aether Foundation, in the notes of a man who understood better than anyone the true nature of ultraspace. But that story belongs to another chapter. Necrozma's light wasn't just stolen from a distant dimension. When we trace the path of that energy, from the depths of Ultra Megalopolis to the shores of Alola, we find something unexpected. The very light that Necrozma lost, the light that the people of that fallen civilization once relied upon, it didn't just disappear into the void. It found its way here to Alola in a form so beautiful and deceptively simple that for centuries it was celebrated without ever being fully understood. I am talking about the shimmer that dances over the islands, the sparkle in the air, the energy that pulses in Z crystals. This is the story of how the very nature of Alola is tied to the cold vacuum of ultraspace. Alola has always been described as a region bathed in light, a tropical paradise where the very air seems to gleam with an inner luminescence. Tourists take photos of the sunsets, the pristine beaches, the volcanic peaks. But if you could look at this phenomenon through the lens of a physicist rather than a vacationer, you would notice something deeply strange about that glow. That sparkle is not atmospheric moisture. It is not the reflection of sunlight off the water. That shimmer is radiation. Specifically, it is the residual energy bleeding into Alola from ultraspace. The islands sit on a geographical fault line of dimensional instability. They are a point of contact, a scar on reality where the skin of our universe is thin. Before the Tapu Guardians arrived, to seal the strongest of these wounds, the energy simply poured in. Over millennia, it settled into the soil, into the flora, into the very air the people of Alola breathed. It became a part of them. This brings us to Z-Power, the heart of Alolan culture, the rigorous dance, the brilliant burst of light. Z-Power is not a mystical force unique to this world. It is a scientifically repeatable phenomenon of energy transference from ultraspace. The Z crystals are not just magical stones. They are physical condensers of this ambient extra-dimensional radiation. They are batteries, slowly charged by the leak of the wormholes. But the crystal is only half of the equation. The dance the trainer performs is not merely a ceremony. It is a catalyst, a method of aligning the trainer's own bioelectric field, their aura, to the specific frequency of the ultra-space energy stored in the stone. Every time a trainer of Alola unleashes a Z move, they are briefly opening a controlled, miniature wormhole. They are reaching across the boundary between dimensions to draw power directly from the other side. The light you see erupting from a supersonic sky strike or a savage spin-out is the same light that pulses within the body of an ultra beast. This explains the role of the Guardians, the Tapu. We often think of them as simple protectors of the local wildlife or the keepers of tradition, but their duty is much older and more terrifying. The Tapu are the wardens of the dimensional barrier. They are the reason Alola still exists. The Tapu do not just fight physical beasts, they fight the very influence of ultraspace. They filter the radiation. They decide how much of the sparkle leaks in and how much is sealed away. They tolerated the Z crystals because it allows the people of Alola to harness a sliver of that power defensively, creating a weapon out of the poison. The Tapu regulate the flow of ultra energy. When a wormhole tears open wide enough for a Nihilego to pass through, it is the Tapu who push the beast back. Their power is the counterbalance to the entropy of ultraspace. The totem Pokémon that roam the islands are essentially living nodes in this network. They are guardians empowered directly by the Tapu to serve as the first line of defense against smaller dimensional anomalies. The Aether Foundation missed this connection for years. They saw the Ultra Beasts as purely destructive aliens. They saw Z moves as a quaint cultural tradition. They failed to see the science tying it all together. Mohn, before he was lost to the wormhole, was perhaps the only one on the brink of this discovery. The traditional dances of Alola are not rituals performed for luck. They are harmonic frequencies, physical chants, designed to resonate with the dimensional fabric of the planet. The crystals are not rocks. They are lightning rods for potential energy. The bond between a trainer and Pokémon, intensified through Z-Power, creates a stable hybrid entity capable of channeling the immense physics-breaking power from the other side without the trainer or the Pokémon disintegrating from the sheer load. It is a beautiful and terrifying irony. The very element that threatens Alola, the raw chaos of an alien dimension, is the exact same element that empowers its strongest defenders. The beast and the blessing are one and the same, separated only by the intention of the channel and the filter provided by the Tapu. This system worked perfectly for millennia, a perfect trinity, the energy from the other side, the conduit of the Z crystal and the Tapu, the will of the trainer. But this balanced system is specifically unique to Alola. Deep beneath the surface of another region, far from the tropical sun and the hum of the wormholes, a different pattern was taking shape. A story of power drawn not from the stars above, but from the churning depths of the earth itself. A story that begins with a single glowing seed in a dark forest and ends with a kaiju-sized paradox stomping through the industrial wilds. This is where our path leads next, to the Galar Anomalies, and the discovery that the light of ultra space may not be the only window into the impossible. The energy we traced from the Z crystals back through the ultra wormholes, that residual extradimensional radiation bathing Alola in its strange light, hinted at a deeper truth. The boundaries between dimensions are not fixed. They are elastic, prone to stress, and sometimes they tear in places no one expects. Alola was the epicenter, the first major fault line, but it was not the only one. Years after the Aether Paradise incident, after the international police had catalogued the last of the roaming Ultra Beasts and the Beast Balls had been quietly shelved, a new anomaly surfaced, not in the tropical warmth of a volcanic archipelago, but in the cold ancient highlands of the Crown Tundra in the Galar region. The Galar region, as you might know, is famous for its Dynamax phenomenon, the ability for Pokémon to grow to colossal proportions within certain energy-dense areas. It is a power born from particles that saturate the land, particles that have been there for millennia, locked in the soil and the stone of the power spots. And deep beneath the Crown Tundra, buried under permafrost and legend, lies the Max Lair. It is a cave system unlike any other, a place where Dynamax energy pools so thickly that it bends light and distorts reality. It was here, in the depths of that labyrinth, that explorers first encountered something they never expected: Ultra Beasts. Not from any wormhole visible in the sky, but emerging from the shadows of a Dynamax den, as if they had always been there. The sudden appearance of these entities in the Crown Tundra's Max Lair defied everything the Aether Foundation had documented. In Alola, Ultra Beasts arrived through obvious, violent portals. They were preceded by gravitational disturbances, by the eerie shimmer of a tear in the fabric of space. Here in Galar, there was no such warning. One moment, a trainer would be facing a Dynamax Venusaur or a colossal Charizard. The next, a Nihilego would slither from the mist, or a Blacephalon would cackle in the electric glow of a raid den. It was as if the Max Lair was not just a cave system, but a crossroads, a place where the boundary between Ultra Space and the Pokémon world had become paper-thin, almost non-existent. This raises a set of theories that are still debated among the few researchers bold enough to study these phenomena. The core question is simple: how does the Dynamax phenomenon interact with Ultra Space? One prominent hypothesis suggests that Dynamax energy and Ultra Wormhole energy are fundamentally the same thing, just expressed differently. The particles that cause Pokémon to grow to giant size may be a localized, stable form of the same extra-dimensional energy that tears open doorways to other worlds. If that is true, then the Max Lair is not just a cave, it is a natural Ultra Wormhole generator, one that has been slowly leaking alien radiation for centuries. The Ultra Beasts, sensitive to these energy signatures, would naturally be drawn to it, as if following a beacon. Another theory posits that the Dynamax phenomenon itself creates micro-tears in space-time every time a Pokémon Dynamaxes. Usually, these tears are too small and too brief to be noticed. But within the Max Lair, where the power is concentrated and the raids involve multiple trainers, the cumulative effect could be enough to permanently weaken the dimensional barrier. The Ultra Beasts, ever patient, ever wandering, simply discovered these weak points and stepped through. This would explain why they appear specifically during Dynamax adventures, those cooperative expeditions into the heart of the lair. It is not a random encounter. It is a consequence of the very act of hunting them, and that is what makes Dynamax adventures so remarkable. They represent a completely new method of studying these entities. In Alola, researchers had to build specialized cages, develop beast balls, and rely on unprecedented technology to even hold an Ultra Beast for observation. In Galar, trainers do it casually, as if it were just another raid. By venturing into the Max Lair, selecting a path, and battling through waves of Dynamax Pokémon and Ultra Beasts alike, they are mapping the territory where two dimensions overlap. Each captured Ultra Beast is not just a trophy, it is a data point. How does its Dynamax form compare to its normal form? Does the energy of the lair affect its behavior? These are questions that the researchers at the Battle Tower and the local professor are only beginning to ask. So why Galar? Why did this cold, industrialized region become a secondary hotspot for dimensional activity? The answer may lie in the land itself. The Crown Tundra is ancient, older than the rest of the region, and it is filled with remnants of a bygone age. The ruins of a civilization that may have understood Dynamax energy far better than we do. Some believe that those ancient people deliberately built their structures over the most potent power spots, perhaps to harness the same energy that now tears into ultraspace. If they accidentally or intentionally pierce the dimensional veil, then the max layer is not a natural formation at all. It is a wound, left unrepaired for millennia, and the ultra beasts are simply seeping through the cracks. Consider the legends of the tundra, stories of a great darkness that once fell from the sky, of a Pokémon that could bind dimensions. We know now that Necrozma, that prismatic entity from Alola, may be an ultra beast itself. If it could cross over, why not others? And if the Galar region possesses its own ancient power source, its own version of the Z crystals in the form of the rusted sword and shield, then it is entirely plausible that the region is a secondary nexus. The Crown Tundra, with its frozen isolation and buried secrets, may be the second of many gateways we have yet to discover. But here is the strange twist. After the flurry of activity in the Crown Tundra, after the last Ultra Beast was caught, and the last Dynamax adventure completed, the phenomenon stopped. No new reports, no new sightings. The Ultra Beasts vanished from Galar as suddenly as they had appeared. The Max Lair returned to being a mere cave of oversized Pokémon, and the official record, the scientific literature, the public conversation, all of it went quiet. Generations passed, the games moved on, and the Ultra Beasts, once a galaxy-shattering discovery, became a footnote. The silence that followed across Generation 8 and Generation 9 is perhaps the most mysterious chapter of all. The Galar Anomalies were the last ripple. In a pond that had long since settled, the Max Lair encounters felt less like a new invasion and more like an echo, a final transmission from a dimension that had already closed its doors. The question that hangs over Generations 8 and 9 is not what we found, but what we didn't find. The silence of the Ultra Beasts. Why did the wormhole stop opening? Why did the focus of the Pokémon world shift so dramatically away from the extraterrestrial and toward the temporal? The absence is the story, and it is a story that tells us everything about how the fabric of that reality healed itself. In Generation 8, the crisis of Galar was entirely internal. The darkest day was a slumbering giant awakened by a power struggle within the region. Eternatus is an alien, yes, a poison from the stars, but it is not an ultra beast. It arrived on a meteor, the old-fashioned way, through space, not through a wormhole. The Dynamax phenomenon is a leak of local energy, a wound in the planet, not a tear in the dimension. The ultra beasts that did appear in the Crown Tundra were tourists, stranded and displaced. They were not explorers. They were refugees from a world that was no longer welcoming. The Max Lair is a terminal, an immigration center, not a gateway. The borders had closed. The lore explains this closure with brutal efficiency. The ultra wormholes were never a stable highway. They were violent stress fractures in reality. They required specific catalysts to open. The immense power of a cosmog, the breakdown of Necrozma, or the focused machinery of the Aether Foundation. After the Necrozma crisis, the light source of the Ultra Dimension was stabilized. The wormholes that Lusamine opened were surgically sealed by the Aether Foundation. The wild portals left by the stress of Cosmog closed when that creature was no longer under duress. The International Police declared the threat contained. The bridges were burned. Operation Beastball was concluded. Generation 9 took this silence and made it a philosophy. In Paldea, the mystery is not where, but when. The terrestrial phenomenon does not open a door to another dimension. It opens a door to another era. The paradox Pokémon, the ultra beasts of this generation in spirit, but their origin is chronological dislocation instead of dimensional breach. They are aliens of time, not space. The shift is profound. The universe had stopped expanding outward in the way the Ultra Beasts demanded. Area Zero is a wound in the timeline, not the cosmos. The crystals there are not touching another universe. They are touching the past and the future. The energy of the terrestrial phenomenon is a chronal anchor. The developers chose to make the new alien mysteries about temporality because the spatial mysteries were exhausted. The Ultra Beasts answered the question, what else is out there? The Paradox Pokémon answered the question, what else was there and what will there be? It is a natural narrative progression. The expansion of the universe outward was complete. The next step was the expansion of history inward. The mystery of ultraspace was solved. The character arcs of Mohn and Lusamine were resolved. The international police moved on. The world moved on. And this is the defining legacy of the Ultra Beasts. They are a closed chapter, a perfect narrative circle sealed tight. They arrived as a terrifying unknown, an invasive species from a reality we could not comprehend. They were studied. They were contained. They were resolved. The silence of generations 8 and 9 is not an absence of content. It is the final page of the book. It makes them unique in the Pokémon mythos. They are the only major threat that was completely and totally resolved, with no threads left to pull. The wormholes are closed. The beast balls are in storage. The echoes in the max lair are just that, echoes of a concluded event. But what is the mark left by a closed door? What happens to the ecosystem that was invaded once the invader is gone? The scars remain. The Type Null project remains. The Aether Foundation's purpose remains. The fear of the unknown remains. A ghost in the machine of the Pokémon world. It is this aftermath, this lingering resonance, that defines the true weight of the Ultra Beast story. The silence is not empty. It is full of the philosophy of what it means to be an outsider, the ethics of a universe that closes itself off to protect its nature, and the strange haunting beauty of a species that was never meant to exist in our reality. This is the territory we will explore next. This is the philosophy of the invasive. The wormholes are closed. The energy that brought these entities into Alola, into our dimensions, has faded or been sealed away, but the memory of them lingers, and more importantly, the questions they forced upon us remain unanswered. Was there malice in their movements, or were we simply looking at a mirror that reflected our own deepest fears back at us? This brings us to a central, uncomfortable question regarding the Ultra Beasts. Are these creatures evil, or are they simply animals severely out of place? The answer defines not just them, but the very people who reacted to them. It is a question that haunts the deeper corners of conservation biology, invasive species management, and even our own history as a species that has crossed oceans and continents. Consider the real-world case of the lionfish. Native to the warm waters of the Indo-Pacific, it found its way into the Atlantic Ocean, likely through the aquarium trade. It is a beautiful creature, adorned with venomous spines and flowing fins. It is not evil. It does not wake up plotting the destruction of the reef. It acts on pure biological instinct: eat, reproduce, survive. But in the Atlantic, it has no natural predators. It consumes the juvenile fish of the reef at an unsustainable rate. It is a perfect biological machine operating in the wrong ecosystem. The Ultra Beasts are exactly this. Nihilego does not harbour a grudge against humanity. Its neurotoxins and its parasitic tendencies are simply the way it interacts with the world it evolved in. When an Ultra Beast tears through a wormhole into our dimension, it is like a lionfish arriving on a pristine Caribbean reef. The destruction it causes is not born of malice. It is a collision of incompatible systems. It is a biological entity acting according to its nature in an environment that has developed no defense against it. The human fear of what is biologically other is an ancient and powerful survival mechanism. Look at how we react to a spider versus a puppy. The spider might be completely harmless to you, but its form is so vastly different from our own that our brain flags it as a potential threat. It moves differently. It has too many limbs. Its eyes are arranged in an unfamiliar pattern. Now, imagine a creature made of pure glowing light that crackles with electricity, or a gelatinous entity that absorbs matter through its translucent skin. The international police did not just fear the Ultra Beasts because the data showed they were powerful. They feared them because their very structure defied the normalcy of the Pokémon world. Looker and his team felt this deeply. The officer lost in the line of duty was a casualty of this biological clash. The beast that struck her down was not acting with malice or political intent. It was simply reacting to a world it could not comprehend. Defended by organisms it did not recognize as equals. And this is where the response of the Aether Foundation reveals something deeply uncomfortable about our own history as a species. The hubris of the Aether Foundation reflects a very real pattern of scientific overreach. When faced with a complex alien biosphere, what did Lusamine do? She did not prioritize language or treaties or observation. She immediately turned to control. She started a breeding project, Project Beast Killer. The creation of type, Null, and its evolution into Silvally is a chilling monument to this instinct. Instead of attempting to coexist or even understand the intrinsic value of the Ultra Beasts, the Foundation decided that the only logical response to a perceived threat was to build a weapon capable of dominating it. It is the same mistake we have made throughout history. When encountering a culture or a species, we cannot immediately classify. We assume it is a threat. We build walls. We build weapons. We call it containment or defense, but often it is just fear given form. The very language used to describe them tells this story. The Aether Foundation and the international police chose the term beast. They are labeled with codes and classifications. UB1, UB2 absorption. This linguistic separation is the first step in a kind of dehumanization, or rather, a de-Pokemonization. They are not simply a water type from a distant region who got lost. They are defined by their danger, their utility, or their alienness. If a Growlithe from Kanto arrived in Alola, it would be a foreign Pokémon, but it would still be granted the dignity of the word. An Ultra Beast is denied that simple belonging. It is kept at a distance by the words we use. Yet the universe is rarely so simple. Consider Poipole, the only Ultra Beast capable of breeding in our world, the one that can truly form a bond with a trainer. Poipole is not a weapon. It is a curious, playful creature from a different dimension. It evolves through love and companionship. This single creature completely shatters the narrative that all Ultra Beasts are purely destructive forces of nature. It suggests that they exist on a spectrum, just like the creatures of our own world. Some are predators, some are nurturers, some, like the lionfish, are simply a bit too effective at what they do when placed in the wrong environment. The question of whether the Ultra Beasts are evil or misunderstood is perhaps the wrong question entirely. They are alien. Their morality is not our morality. Their biology is a direct translation of a completely different set of physical laws. To truly understand them, we must look beyond their ecological impact and into the very fabric of their design. The way they look, the textures of their bodies, the symmetry of their limbs, the specific shapes that make them appear so unsettling yet so beautiful. These are the clues to the universe they came from. The philosophy of the invasive is only one side of the coin. The other side is the visual language that gave them form. What did the designers choose to emphasize, to make something look like it truly belongs to another dimension? This artistic translation of the alien into our world is a deeply fascinating topic. It is the key to unlocking the final layer of the Ultra Beast mystery, and that exploration is exactly where we will turn our attention in our next chapter, The Art of Alien Design. We ended the last chapter with a quiet question. Are Ultra Beasts evil or simply misunderstood? The lionfish analogy is fitting, but it only scratches the surface. To really understand these creatures, we have to look at how they were made, not their origins in lore, but their origins on the drawing board. Because the designers had a specific goal when they sat down to create the Ultra Beasts. And that goal was to make something that felt fundamentally alien, something that did not belong in the world of Pokémon. And to achieve that, they reached for tools that are rarely used in creature design for a children's franchise. They reached for mathematics, for deliberate asymmetry, for proportions that mimic the golden ratio, and they reached for a concept that unsettles the human mind, the uncanny valley. Let's start with the first Ultra Beast you ever meet, Nihilego. Its codename is UB1 Symbiont, and its design is a masterpiece of discomfort. Look at it. A translucent, bell-shaped body with tentacles dangling beneath, like a jellyfish that has been stretched into an almost humanoid silhouette. But it's not a jellyfish. The designers have said they drew inspiration from deep-sea creatures, specifically from siphonophores, and from the way certain marine animals use bioluminescence. But there is something else. There is a mathematical structure beneath Nihilego's simplicity. Its tentacles, if you count them, follow a Fibonacci-like pattern in their arrangement around the central bell. The bell itself is a perfect logarithmic spiral if you trace its curve from the tip to the base, and this is not accidental. The golden ratio, approximately 1.618 to 1, appears repeatedly in Nihilego's design. The ratio of the bell height to the tentacle length, the spacing of the small nodules on its surface. It is all calibrated to a pattern that exists in nature, but when it is applied to an otherworldly body, it feels wrong, because the human eye is trained to recognize the golden ratio in beauty, in flowers, in shells, in the Mona Lisa. When it appears in a creature that has no eyes, no mouth, and a skin made of acidic neurotoxins, we feel a tension. That tension is the first hint that Ultra Beasts are not meant to be loved. Now consider Buzzwole and Pheromosa, UB2 absorption and UB2 beauty. They are opposites in almost every way. Buzzwole is all bulk, a mosquito-like bodybuilder with swollen muscles that look almost ridiculous. Pheromosa is all grace, a cockroach with impossibly long legs and a wasp-waist silhouette that suggests both elegance and danger. The designers intentionally exaggerated human physical ideals to the point of caricature. Buzzwole's proportions are laughably masculine, shoulders wider than his entire torso, thighs like tree trunks, a neck that barely exists. But the golden ratio is still there. The ratio of his arm length to his chest circumference matches a rectangle that classic architecture often uses. Why? Because a form that is mathematically pleasing, even when inflated to absurdity, still draws the eye. It makes us stare even as we recoil. Pheromosa, on the other hand, is all lines. Her body could be described as a series of Fibonacci spirals. Her antennae curve in one, her legs bend at angles that approximate the divine proportion, and her overall posture creates a triangle that perfectly fits the golden rectangle. But here is the twist. Those beautiful proportions are attached to a creature that is blindingly fast, venomous and predatory. The designers used beauty as a trap. They made her look like a supermodel, but they made her behave like a mantis, and they avoided giving her any recognizably Pokémon feature. No cute eyes, no soft fur, no friendly color palette. Her body is almost monochrome, a stark white with magenta highlights that feel more toxic than decorative. Then we have Xurkitree, UB3 lighting. This one is perhaps the most jarring. It is literally a tangle of wires, shaped vaguely like a tree, but the wires are not random. They form a fractal pattern. If you look closely, the branching of Xurkitree's limbs follows a repeating self-similar structure, something like a Sierpinski triangle. Fractals are a mathematical concept where the same shape repeats at smaller and smaller scales. In nature, they appear in ferns, in coastlines, in lightning bolts themselves. So Xurkitree is in a sense a living fractal, but a fractal that has been given too many branches. It feels like a computer simulation of a tree, not a tree. And again, the designer stripped away any Pokémon-like features. No eyes, no mouth, no discernible face. It has 3 toes on each foot, a number that echoes the golden ratio's presence in 3-dimensional forms. But those toes are just metal prongs. The unease comes from the fact that Xurkitree looks like it was drawn by an algorithm, not by a human artist, and that is precisely the intention. Celesteela and Kartana, U4 Blaster and UB4 Cutter, take the alien aesthetic in a different direction. Celesteela is a massive rocket ship shaped like a woman. Or is she a woman shaped like a rocket ship? Her design incorporates the golden ratio in her silhouette. The distance from her head to her waist, compared to her waist to her feet, approximates the divine proportion. But her body is made of steel and ceramic, and her face, if you can call it, that is a flat plate with glowing lights. She is both elegant and industrial. Kartana, on the other hand, is a paper-thin humanoid made of origami-like folds. The golden ratio appears in the angles of her blades, in the way her arms extend at exactly 1.618 times the length of her torso. But she has no face, no personality, no emotion. She is a living weapon. The designers deliberately avoided giving any Ultra Beast a face that could be read as friendly. Even Kartana's head is just a sharp point, and that is part of the unease. We cannot anthropomorphize them. We cannot assign feelings to them. They are pure forms, mathematical ideals made flesh. Stakataka and Blacephalon, UB5 Wall and UB5 Fireball are the final pair. Stakataka is a pile of stones that form a fortress, but each stone is actually a separate creature. Its design uses the golden ratio in the stacking pattern. The stones are arranged in a spiral that follows the same mathematical sequence as a nautilus shell, but it is a fortress without a door. It has no entrance, no windows, no way to communicate. Blacephalon is a clown with a head that explodes into a starburst of light. Its body proportions, if you measure them, fit a golden triangle, but the colours are garish. The expression is a fixed grin, and the way it moves is jerky and unpredictable. The designers said they wanted to create something that felt like a nightmare version of a children's toy, and they succeeded. The overall impact of the Ultra Beasts on Generation 7's aesthetic cannot be overstated. Alola is a region of sunshine, beaches and tropical Pokémon. It is warm and inviting, and then these creatures appear, and they are cold, mathematical, and wrong. They break the visual language of the game. They do not belong, and that is the point. The designers used the golden ratio and other mathematical concepts not to make the Ultra Beasts beautiful, but to make them feel like they came from a different universe, because in a way they did. They came from a dimension where the rules of biology are different, where the golden ratio is not a guide to beauty, but a blueprint for something unsettling. They are invasive not just in the story, but in the very design of the game. And as we begin to understand these creatures, we realize that their forms are not the only thing that feels alien. There is a deeper mystery, one that starts with a man who disappeared into ultra space, the man who first discovered these beasts, the man whose name is tied to everything we have discussed. That story is waiting for us in the next chapter, where we will explore the lost lore of Mohn's return. But for now, let the image of those spirals and fractals settle in your mind. Let the unnerving proportions of these designs drift through your thoughts as you fall deeper into sleep. The art of the alien is not just about what we see, it is about what we feel. When we look at something that was never meant to be seen, the previous chapter ended with the golden ratio, with the mathematical precision embedded in the design of each Ultra Beast, as if their forms were not random, but sculpted by the physics of another dimension. And that leads naturally to a question. Who was the first human to look upon those forms and understand that they were not monsters but travelers? That person was Mohn, the original president of the Aether Foundation. And his story is the hidden keystone that holds the entire Ultra Beast phenomenon together, is a story that was never told in the main campaign of Sun and Moon, but was quietly completed in the updates and the alternate timeline of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and in a humble side mode called Poipole. To understand Mohn is to understand the tragic beginning of everything. Several years before the player arrives in Alola, Mohn and his wife Lusamine were leading the Foundation, a family together with their two children, Gladion and Lily. Mohn was the visionary. the one who first discovered ultra wormholes and the creatures within. He found Nihilego, the first ultra beast, and he also found Cosmog, the creature that would later be known as the Nebula Pokémon, capable of tearing open portals between worlds. He brought Cosmog back to the Foundation, and the family raised it as a pet as a child. But the lure of ultra space was too strong. Mohn grew obsessed with exploring the other side, and one day he crossed through a wormhole and did not return. Officially, he was lost. Lusamine believed he was trapped, perhaps still alive, waiting to be rescued. That belief festered into the obsession that drove the entire plot of Sun and Moon. But the truth, which we only learn in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, is far more bittersweet, and it is told not through a climactic cutscene, but through the quiet routine of the Poipole. For those who do not know, the Poipole is a set of islands accessible from the player's menu in the Alola games. A peaceful retreat where your Pokémon can explore, train, and gather items. It is easy to dismiss as a side activity, but the lore buried within it completes Mohn's arc. On one of those islands, you can encounter a character who introduces himself as Mohn. He is not the brilliant scientist you might expect. He is a simple, cheerful man who has lost all memory of his past life. He does not remember Ultra Space. He does not remember his wife or his children. He does not remember the discovery that shattered his family. He lives on the island, tending to the Pokémon, fishing, enjoying the sun, content. The player can bring him berries and items, and he will reward you with Poké Beans, the currency of the Pelago. He speaks in a friendly, almost childlike way. He mentions that he feels like he used to be someone else, but he cannot recall who, and he is not unhappy about that. He is at peace. This is the resolution that Lusamine never got to see in the original Sun and Moon, where she was left broken and arrested after her obsession consumed her. But in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, Lusamine herself learns the truth. She travels to the Poipole and she finds Mohn living there, oblivious to his past, happy, and she makes a choice that defines the entire theme of the Ultra Beast saga. She chooses not to tell him who she is. She does not try to jog his memory. She does not demand that he come home. She looks at a man who was once her partner, who is now a stranger living a simple life, and she decides that it is better for him to remain that way. She lets him go. That decision is the final closing of a wound that tore open when the first Ultra Wormhole appeared. Lusamine had spent years trying to bring Mohn back, trying to rescue him from Ultra Space, building weapons, capturing beasts, losing her humanity in the process. And when she finally finds him, she realizes that the man she was searching for no longer exists. The person standing before her is a new man, one who has no need for the past. To pull him back into the world of Ultra Beasts and Aether Foundation and lost children would be a cruelty. So she leaves him to his island, to his berries and his Pokémon, and she walks away. That is the true end of the Mohn story, and it is also the symbolic end of the Ultra Beast narrative arc, because Mohn was the origin. He was the first human to step into Ultra Space, the one who brought back the knowledge, the one whose disappearance set everything in motion. With his memory gone and his new life established, the chain of cause and effect is severed. The Ultra Wormholes are no longer being opened by desperate searches. The beasts are no longer being hunted by an obsessive foundation. The story that began with a man chasing the unknown ends with that man forgetting he ever did. It is a quiet, melancholic, and strangely peaceful conclusion. No final battle, no dramatic speech, just a man on an island and a woman who loved him enough to let him be. There is a particular detail that resonates deeply. In the Japanese version of the games, Mohn's dialogue occasionally includes references to the word Poké, as if he is trying to remember something familiar. He calls Poké Beans Poké and seems to have a fondness for that sound. It is as if the name of the foundation, Aether, is gone, but the word Poké remains, a ghost of his former life. And he says he sometimes dreams of floating through a starry sky, surrounded by strange lights. He does not know what it means, but it does not frighten him. He finds it beautiful. That is the loss, rendered gently. The terror of Ultra Space the danger of the beasts, the desperation of Lusamine. All of it is reduced to a beautiful dream in the mind of a man who no longer remembers. This closure also reframes the entire Ultra Beast phenomenon as a story about the cost of crossing boundaries. Mohn crossed a boundary and lost his identity. Lusamine crossed a moral boundary and lost her family. The beasts themselves crossed a dimensional boundary and became invasive. Not because they were evil, but because they did not belong. The resolution is not about conquering or exterminating. It is about separation. The Ultra Wormhole's close. The beasts remain in their world. Mohn remains in his peaceful ignorance, and the characters who survive are left to rebuild their lives with the understanding that some doors should stay shut. But of course, in a world where technology continues to advance, and where the crown tundra of Galar later shows Ultra Beasts appearing in max lairs, the doors do not stay shut forever. The future of dimensional travel is always waiting, always beckoning. And if Mohn's story teaches us anything, it is that the next person to step through may not come back the same. That thought lingers as we consider what lies ahead for the Pokémon world, and for the beings that exist just beyond the fabric of reality, unseen, waiting for the next threshold to open. The story of Mohn is one that lingers, isn't it? A man who stepped through a hole in reality and was fundamentally broken and remade by the experience. The Ultra Recon Squad returned to their world. The portals, for the most part, closed. The research notes were filed away, and he found peace of a kind on a quiet island far from the world he once knew. But the central question, the one that haunts the aftermath of that bittersweet ending, is rarely spoken aloud. What happens now? What happens to the knowledge, the technology, the open wound between dimensions? Can the Ultra Wormholes ever be reopened? And more importantly, can they be reopened for peaceful exploration? The game mechanics gave us a thrilling version of this. The ability to fly through a nebula of light in a solitary wormhole, hunting for beasts. But narrative lore suggests the process is far more precarious. The wormholes open because of stress, because of Necrozma's stolen light, because of the natural friction between reality. A peaceful reopening would require a degree of control humanity has never truly demonstrated. It would require a key, a cosmog, one of the rarest creatures in existence, a being that sacrifices its form to create the bridge. Could such a bond be forged again without tragedy? Could the international police, or a new generation of Aether Foundation researchers, stabilize the entrance without the desperation that drove Lusamine? If the will and the knowledge could be gathered, what would we find waiting for us in that alien skyline beyond the gate? The potential for future games to revisit the Ultra Megalopolis is arguably one of the richest narrative seeds left unplanted in the entire series. In our brief visit, we only saw the city in its darkest hour, drained of colour and vitality, a civilization on its knees in the aftermath of Necrozma's rampage. We never got to walk its streets in the light. We never met its citizens as people, only as silhouettes in the dark. A restored megalopolis, a civilization thriving alongside its resident ultra beasts, would be an entirely new world to explore. The architecture alone, those stark, organic spires, holds countless stories of a culture that evolved in a dimension completely foreign to our own. The door to that city is still there. It is simply waiting for a steady hand to knock. And what of the tools we built to survive that first invasion? The Beast Ball technology lingers in the modern world like a fingerprint from another dimension. Faba's design was a marvel of applied dimensional physics, a cage tuned specifically to the frequency of non-native life. In the current era of the Pokémon world, the high-tech advancements of the Galar region's Pokeball lot, the ancient artisan craftsmanship of old Hisui. But the Beast Ball remains a completely unique artifact. It was never mass-produced for the public in the same way. It exists in the quiet storage boxes of trainers who caught a Guzzlord or a Xurkitree during the fall of Alola. It is a constant, physical reminder that our reality is not the only one with the authority to contain life. The very existence of these specialized spheres poses a lingering question to the scientific community. Have we truly seen everything the universe has to offer? Or are we just holding a specific net, waiting for the next shift in the dimensional frequency to bring something new into our net? This waiting brings us directly to the most and exciting possibility of all, the possibility of undiscovered dimensions beyond the known ultraspace. We understand ultraspace largely through the lens of the 11 designated ultra beasts, but the lore of the Pokémon multiverse is vast. We know of the distortion world of Giratina, a broken reflection of our own reality. We know of the strange realm of the unknown. We suspect that ultraspace is the connective tissue between these realities, a highway system of raw, chaotic energy. When the Aether Foundation mapped the ultra wormholes, they only charted the routes that were actively bleeding into Alola. What exists in the profound darkness between those mapped paths? Dimensions that have never sent a messenger. Dimensions that have never required a beast ball. The silence of the recent generations regarding new ultra beasts does not signify emptiness. It signifies patience. The territory beyond our known maps is vast, unexplored, and simply waiting. And that is the heart of the matter for the future of dimensional travel. It is not a question of technology alone, but a question of intent. Do we reach out, or do we wait to be contacted? The Ultra Beasts taught us that contact can be terrifying, and tragic. It taught us that love can become obsession, and that curiosity can shatter a family. But it also gave us knowledge. It gave us allies like the curious Poipole who chose to stay, and it gave us a glimpse at a universe so far stranger and more beautiful than we ever imagined. We stand at the edge of a cliff, looking out into a sea of stars that do not belong to this sky. The answers are out there in the silence, waiting for the next brave, or perhaps foolish, soul to take the step. Some doors, once opened, are never truly shut again. They simply wait for the right hand to reach for the handle. And that waiting, that deep quiet from the other side of reality, creates the space for the greatest puzzles of all. It gives us the quiet, the eternal, the unsolved mystery that lies at the very core of what these beasts truly are. The question of whether the ultra wormholes will ever reopen forces us to sit with what was actually left behind. It asks us to consider not just the future of the franchise, but the very soul of Generation 7. And as we arrive at this final chapter of our journey through ultraspace, we are not standing at a locked door. We are standing in a quiet field in Alola, looking up at a sky full of stars, understanding that the door is closed, but the memory of what came through it will never fully fade. Few additions to the world of Pokémon have ever shaken the foundation of what we believed a creature could be. Before the Ultra Beasts, the world felt bounded. There were mythical Pokémon, legendary Pokémon, the faint threads that bound the timeline together. But the Ultra Beasts introduced the terrifying and beautiful idea that our entire reality was just one bubble in an infinite cosmic foam. They did not simply add new types or abilities. In a very real sense, they rewrote the cosmology of the entire franchise. In a series built so heavily on the bond between trainer and partner, they presented an entity that actively rejected that bond without being evil, without being malicious. They simply existed, and that was enough to change everything. And this is the very core of what makes them the most unique and polarizing creatures ever introduced. For some, they were too alien. They did not look like Pokémon. They did not feel like Pokémon. Their stats were too high, their capture rates too low, their motives too opaque. For others, they were exactly what the series needed, a cosmic shake-up, a test of the very philosophy of the Pokeball. They occupy a strange space in the fandom. There is no middle ground. You either love the aesthetic chaos of Blacephalon and its exploding head, or you find it jarring. You see the elegant terror in Nihilego's jellyfish form, or you see a creature that simply does not belong. But that division, that confusion, is exactly what makes them so memorable. The Ultra Beasts deliberately leaned into discomfort. They are weird, and in a franchise that often polishes its edges smooth, They are the sharp pieces that refuse to fit neatly into the box. The lore of these creatures holds a very specific kind of magic, the kind that makes the story of Alola so perfect for a quiet, winding narrative. It is a story of a tropical paradise that hides a deep, cosmic sorrow. A story of a family broken by a hole in reality. Mohn, the father, lost in the static of an alien dimension. Lusamine, the mother, consumed by the cold light of the void. Lily and Gladion, the children, fighting to find their own place in the wake of their parents' disasters. The Ultra Beasts are the engine of that tragedy, but the people of Alola are its heart. Alola itself feels like a dream. The slow rhythm of the islands, the warmth of the sun, the quiet click of a beast ball in the laboratory. There is a profound melancholy in the Alola region that is often overlooked. It is a place where the sun is always shining, but there are dark, cold shadows lurking beneath the waves. The narrative gives us a complete story, from the cold shock of first contact, to the heat of conflict, and finally to a quiet, bittersweet resolution. And that completeness is comforting. We know Mohn is at peace, tending to his Poipole, unaware of the life he left behind. We know the wormholes are sealed. We know Lily is free. It is a finished book, a book we can return to again and again, finding new details in the margins each time. But standing here at the end, looking up at that night sky over Alola, we have to wonder. The Ultra wormholes are closed. The crisis is over, but the mystery remains. Does the void stare back? The Ultra Beasts we catalogued are just the ones that crossed the threshold. What about the ones that stayed behind? What about the ones so alien that they could not survive our atmosphere, our physics, our very concept of time? The cracks in reality have been sealed, but reality is full of cracks. Perhaps there is a wormhole opening right now, in a dimension we cannot perceive, linking to a galaxy we have never named, and perhaps that is the most beautiful truth of all. The world of Pokémon will never be fully mapped. The unknown will always be there, just beyond the horizon. The Ultra Beasts were a reminder that our world is not the center of the universe. It is a single island in an endless cosmic archipelago, and as we let our eyes drift closed, we can find peace in that mystery. The stars are still there, the cracks in reality are still there, but for now we can rest, knowing that the Alola region and all the dimensions it touched are safe. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the complete history of the Ultra Beasts. It is a story that will echo forever in the quiet corners of the Pokémon world. Good night. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter.